As usual, I have my hard stop at 6.
Okay. And we will try to get to everything. We do also have elections at the end of the agenda. Yes, there's. The human conquerors should be here. So don't necessarily need to start with that.
And these are courtesy.
Yes, for the time being.
We follow in line.
Do we know how the commissioners are progressing? Wasn't there another besides two?
I know there's two positions open.
Okay.
I do not know where they are off the top of my head. I did just transfer a talent to Jacqueline, so there's a little bit of bubbling with that. I did think about it earlier today. If we were having some email issues, so let's see if the system goes forward. Yes. We are just waiting for at least Commissioner Conyers to show up. He is confirmed for this evening. I think if he's not here by 4:05, we do have a quorum, so we'll probably start rolling, if that's okay with our commissioners, just so we don't waste any. If we don't have to.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
There he is.
No problem. Thank you everyone for being patient. Truly appreciate it. Sorry about that.
And as long as it's okay with the show, I think the other commissioners decided to, yes.
That's not a problem. I
I
appreciate it.
like to turn the tables and like nominate one on one.
No, that's okay. As long as my fellow commissioners.
I thought the new guy was supposed to be the partner. He's had enough time to get up to stuff. Let's let him lead the
That
meeting.
we might do.
As long as the team agrees to help, I think we'll be okay. I'll try to move swiftly again.
Jeffrey does have a hard stop at 6, and we do have elections at the end of the agenda.
So with that being the case, do we need Jeffrey to be present in order to be successful in those nominations?
Only if you're going to nominate him for something and he's not here to confirm or deny if you would do it.
All right, that's actually very convenient.
See if you can. Bag of tricks, man.
I'm gonna get very, all
Bag of tricks.
Share access.
Okay, I think the, call to order. This would be, let's see, August Victorian Village, or August 21st, or 2020 Victorian Village Commission hearing. Our next business meeting will be Wednesday, August 25th, 2021. That's 12 noon at 111 North Front Street, second floor, that's room 204. This room.
That's this room,
That's
yes.
Okay, so again, perfect. So I think we're kind of getting back to normal, so it'll be exactly this room as well. Our next hearing will be Wednesday, September 8th, 2021 at 4 p.m. And that's going to be at 111 North Front Street, second floor, room 204, same room. I'd like to swear staff. Do you affirm to tell the truth, nothing but the truth?
Kimberly Bernard-Chi, and yes, I do.
Thanks, Kim. Appreciate it. Introduction with the commissioners present. So kind of want to go around the room.
Jeffrey Issel.
Kevin Sullivan.
Tim Skinner.
J. Thomas Silo.
Sean Conyers. So do we want to go ahead and just do a small brief overview of the hearing format just to help?
Yes. So what will happen is the city staff will present materials, then we'll have our applicants sworn in and asked to present any additional materials if applicable. Speakers will be sworn in and provided 3 minutes to speak. And then commissioners will discuss the case and ask questions as needed. Just a note, if anybody is continued or a conceptual item, you have an additional week from the deadline to submit materials to be on the next month's hearing agenda.
Touch on any of the related items that are see just a little bit of that.
For sake of time, though, it looks like everybody's maintaining the 6 feet social distancing, but
Is there a public forum there?
no, not today.
So staff approves. So is there a motion to approve the items that will be reviewed by staff? Motion to approve. Second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed.
All right, do we have any abstentions from them? I can read through them real quick, just in case. We typically do note that on the minutes. Okay, so hold on a sec. So starting on page 6, just show of hands or call it out. If anybody is abstaining from the following: 1145 North High Street, 934 Yale Avenue, 1042 Yale Avenue, 187 to 189 West First Avenue, 967 Highland Street, 745 North High Street, 761 North High Street, 1077 Yale Avenue, 889 North High Street. Ready?
Move on to approval of minutes from last month, July 14th, 2021. So is there any thoughts or any discussion related to those meeting minutes? Move to approve. Is there a second? So that's the case. I'm just kind of thinking about maybe one, Tim, obviously wasn't here, wasn't present, or so I don't know if he needs to be abstaining from the motion related to the meeting minutes from last month.
Yes, that
Right.
would.
there's no discussion, so, if all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Okay.
Motion. Okay. I'll turn it over to you, Ken.
All right, we're going to start off with agenda item number 1, which is BV-21-07-023. This is 292 to 296 West First Avenue. And this is to replace the existing vinyl siding with new Georgia Pacific vinyl siding. This also includes replacing the window and door frames that we built out to maintain 3D appearance, repainting and repairing the trim around the windows and doors, which would be painted at Roycroft copper, replacing 2 non-original steel front doors and storm doors with thermal true benchmark fiberglass doors. Where the storm doors are not being replaced, the transom is to remain. And to replace the vinyl shutters, flat panel shaker with shutter, and that would be painted in wax dark walnut, painting, repaired stucco, and colonnade gray. I've included the minutes from the July 14th, 2021 hearing in the staff report. HBO staff did complete a site visit on July 21st. There are areas of the vinyl that are in poor condition and a small portion may be able to be replaced, no more than an elevation. The asbestos siding beneath the vinyl siding does appear to be in good condition. Some previous repairs were not done well, and the applicant does need to replace non-appropriate infill as part of siding repair. And that's just in the areas primarily beneath those front doors. The applicant has requested that the replacement of the siding be continued to allow them to further explore and decide upon what option they would like to undertake. Commissioners at the business meeting were supportive of that, but suggested that maybe moving the shutters and the vinyl siding until it's confirmed what direction the siding shutter replacement will be going. Staff recommends splitting the application. Motion A would include painting and repair of window frames, painting the repaired stucco and improvement of the replacement front doors. And then motion B would be to continue the replacement of the existing siding and vinyl shutters. Basis for recommendation is City Code 3116.11, the standards for alteration.
All right, so could you go ahead and introduce yourselves for the record, and could you swear in?
I'm Sean Bledsacker.
Caitlin Blotzacker.
You affirm to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
I do.
Yes.
You have anything to add?
No, I think that summarizes it well. We would like to bifurcate it, like she said.
Yeah.
The 2 motions, and then do more exploration as it relates to the siding to see what our potential options are.
Seems like pretty self-explanatory, and everything that was talked about last month was put in action, so. Phil was putting it up, is there any concerns?
No.
So. Motion we can choose.
2 motions.
2 motions, that's correct. Thank you, sir.
So motion that continue items number 1 and 4, the siding and shutters.
Second.
So that is a motion for item 1. So item A. Right. Yes. So. All right, we're ready to vote. So, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? This motion passed. Item A.
And that's continued.
And then, I'm getting mixed up, so item B is continued, right?
No. Continued was the siding and shutter, so that was motion A. D would be for the approval.
That makes sense. So item B is work that can go to commence, which is the replacement of the doors. You have a discussion item with the doors. We were okay with the fiberglass, given that there's no color. But we felt as though, based upon talking to staff, that the composition of the doors was still in alignment with being considered appropriate.
So I missed this meeting. I was more worried about actually.
So that's fair. That's why I can stop.
So I don't think that we would approve a door like this. It's more of a mission style. You do the half length or 3/4.
That was the question, is what's the style of the door appropriate? I think we felt comfortable with a team and fiberglass and wood, given there's no cover, so Jerry, we can do a little bit of it.
Yeah,
That wasn't much.
Yeah, I agree with the material in fiberglass in this condition.
Okay. Alright, so is there a motion, and maybe potentially what we can do is, would it be appropriate to kind of outline the type of door? And then,
well, are you guys okay with a half light or 3/4 light?
I mean, we've used that other door before and we've been successful with it. I guess I'm not familiar with what options are available for the style that you're mentioning. So, I mean, if it's a must-have, certainly we can look into it if you guys are comfortable moving forward with the door that we.
I mean, basically, it's the door that you're replacing. It's just, it doesn't have any of the mullions or the finish at the bottom. So it's just a
So just for,
half
so,
light.
so this is a half light, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay,
you would
So I-
also have the other option is the 3/4 light, which is a little bit more glass.
Softer.
so I guess the concern would be, this is a rental to duplex, safety concerns related to that. You know, this could be a different mindset than those of people that would be owning it and living it long-term. So more glass means more opportunities for things to break, more opportunities for people to come in, and then also you can see where there's that upper lock actually has a lock on the inside because the previous owners had issues with people breaking in. So
They're awful high up there breaking in that door. Yes, me.
yeah, I don't disagree,
Uh,
but they had some issues there. So yeah, my concern would just be, you know, the door that we presented, it has glass, but limited glass at a higher spot. So I think from a safety perspective, it just made sense to use that.
Yeah, given our discussions at the business meeting, as well as I've walked by this property and seen the condition of it, I
Mhm.
do not have a concern with us moving forward based upon staff's recommendation as well.
I just think it's a slippery slope, gentlemen. There's not one door like that in our neighborhood, and we've never approved it.
I agree. I'm just basing this upon the discussions we had at the last commission meeting as well as the business meeting. To change on these folks now, I think that's not necessarily most fair, but I understand what you're saying as well.
By any chance, Kimberly, would you, just given the conditions, obviously, I mean, they have to vary to, all the things we've been asking for, are very responsive. Is there a situation where we would outline the fiberglass door would be acceptable in terms of material? Or they would be able to work with that on being able to, pose a door that would be in composition appropriate?
Yes, as you've stated your reasons, so I'll include that in the approval, and then I could always work with staff, which I'm going to default to the Victorian Village guidelines
That's correct.
of what it says for the
Okay, that's
appropriate doors. 'Cause I'm not as familiar with the Victorian at the moment, so I don't know if there is a solid door that they might consider using. Because I know in Italian, we had a couple of half lights and some solid, like 4 panels, but I know Victorian has a couple less options.
And so that might have been a little bit, obviously Kim is, she's coming over supporting the Victorian Village, and so some of that carry over. So that might have strayed, so to speak, the conversation from the business meeting or from last month. That's something, if we were to outline that, would that be acceptable to work with staff to identify that? It wouldn't have to necessarily come back, but that would just be dialogue with the staff to be able to land on that right solution.
Okay, I guess just to summarize then, you guys then wouldn't support this style of door, this specific door as we're presenting it?
That's correct. Okay. And I think it's just more so just making sure that hopefully that we're staying in line with the guidelines and like straying from that perspective, but.
So if we were to walk around the neighborhood and find examples of that style of door, which I'm pretty sure I've seen,
Mhm.
would that change your opinion?
Unfortunately, it's not guaranteed.
Okay, well, it just seemed to be an
We don't even know
example.
if they went through the process. They could have bought it and put it up on a Sunday. So if you do find them, let us know.
Mhm.
Okay. All right, so is there a motion, item B, which is door replacement as well as the paint trims and as well as the restoration or masonry.
Motion to approve the paint and masonry restoration with follow-up cut sheets to be provided to staff for staff approval of fiberglass door. That's a
A second that motion.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I feel like I can say aye. I was counting the hands.
I do want a quick clarification. Jeffrey had mentioned the half-light, as well as the three-quarter light. Guidelines do show the three-quarter light, but they don't show the half-light. Is the commission okay with the half-light?
Absolutely.
Okay. I want to note that because it's not specifically in here,
That's
and
right.
that way, it gives you one more option as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Any questions?
So just to clarify, we don't necessarily have to come back. We can just work with you guys on a door style.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, okay, I just wanted to make sure.
So that's the communication that you've been having with your really
Yeah.
continue that.
Yes, and then
Okay.
the siding and the shutters are. So you would-
Right, yes, we're still deciding what to do.
That's okay.
Yeah. Okay. Think-
No
Any other
further
questions?
questions.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We will move on to application number 2, which is 955 Delaware Avenue. This application is to replace the front porch, railing, deck, and skirting with revised material. This was originally on the agenda in January. I did comment, we addressed materials, wood frame, as well as some other materials to look at. Staff does recommend approval of the application with any clarification or modifications from the commission. Basis for recommendation is City Code 3116.11, the standards for alteration.
Would you be able to state your name?
Scott Hennick.
Brenda Rose.
Swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth.
Sure.
We do.
Do you have anything to add?
No, just basically following up on this, commission's recommendations, other than the floor, deck flooring. The client would like something relatively low maintenance. They're approaching senior citizens, I think.
Well, the deck is all cedar now. It's all falling apart.
Yeah,
The existing deck is cedar with old womanized. It's all dried up, coming apart. So they want to put boral on the trim. They're not really changing the design of the porch. It's just, you want to put boral soffit on the ceiling. Boral material on the soffits and fascia. And then we wanted to use cedar spindles or balusters, cedar handrail. And then build the steps in the deck out of Ipe. So it doesn't require painting or staining or anything like that. It's a natural product. It's multicolored, very similar to what your walls look like. It's very durable. Bugs don't heat it. You don't ever have to finish it or stain it. It's Brazilian hardwood. But we couldn't get Trex approved, obviously, and they didn't like the AZEX either. So, or the last time we were here. So we've tried several options with the client. You know, it's not, obviously we could have picked something sooner, but anything but womanized, she said. Anything but pressure treated. So we came up with Ipe.
So this seems like this is, just kind of read through this with an application, just some type of, maybe some, I think all of us are kind of new to this. So, just a discussion. Is there any thoughts? So I want to lead off. If there was
A couple of questions that we have. Material, I guess, understanding of, still whether to be gray, and so I think that's that being actually season stain. This is an item to discuss. I'm also curious about the painting black symbols.
Well, we don't have to paint them black. The client would love to have them black. She would love to have iron. We've tried that. And so, yeah, I'm just trying to find a way to get her porch done and satisfy her. Last time it was Mary Jo Hudson. She was on school board for years and years and years, and she doesn't understand why we can't do what she wants. And I'm trying to get it. to where, you know, it doesn't have to be black. We can paint them the same color as the functional gray as the trim.
The rendering, it looks like it's.
Yeah, it was,
Times out a little bit of kind of seal without it actually being, without celebrating it as being wood material, and I would think it would be consistent.
yeah, I would have it be
What alternate?
So that's been an interesting conversation. Just kind of since I've been here, really wood has been the four species of wood has been. That's kind of been the, you know, tongue and groove kind of conditions that's been improved and just make sure that profile of wood depth with, you know, is kind of true, which is kind of that 3 3 kind of exposure. So, there has been, I've seen some products come out. I don't think that they've been necessarily approved. There was consideration on a recent project, probably sometime prior to COVID. That was a porch renovation on Yale Avenue that I remember. And they were considering doing an alternate product. But I don't know if that came back. I don't remember.
There's a 1329 Neil. Surface they did it. He did their porches.
I think that's the bond is, you know, some of these products have come a long way technology wise that, you know, it's not necessarily probably just to say, you know, an alternate material is not. You know, we think about durability, long term, maybe these porches with exposure. I think that's how we kind of came to the conclusion on columns and accepting alternate material for columns, things of that nature. So I don't know though if Trex as in not Trex, but as an eBay as in a debt, I think we need to kind of look at it from just from a standpoint of what that board material and its end product look and see if that's appropriate.
What about the other commissions from the village? You know, they're
I haven't heard of the product, so it hasn't come up in Italian yet. I know German was very picky with what materials that they are looking at and improving, because I don't believe. I think they'll look at world, but they don't like party on certain things. I haven't stamped it yet, so I'm not sure of all their idiosyncrasies. And I don't recall if this has come up in brewery or HRC off the top of my head.
Is your concern with finish? Because I mean, it's just, there's an important one. So we were getting away from the alternative material already, but you're really saying that it's not one of the four species that it would normally have approved.
No, I think that the, you know, the eBay in terms of that, it's just, I guess there's two things is just based on what I've heard from past commission conversations is that being able to replicate the proportion in the decking materiality and its composition is one item. And the ability of being able to either paint it or the flexibility of painting it. That was another topic of discussion. So
that is what it is, and it's nothing more, nothing less.
Right.
So if you put it down, it doesn't rot, you don't have to do anything with it, but you can't articulate.
That's, I think that's the biggest thing. So if the, in my opinion, if the ePay doesn't present itself as a deck, it presents itself in the same board materiality as a typical tongue and groove composition would be, then it seemed like it's something to consider. Because it would just be a species.
So, I mean, we talk about the depth, height profile, or also.
Yeah, I think it's hyphen. I mean, that's the, I think that there's both. And then at the same time, the tongue and groove aspect, because, you know, I think that what we want to try to prevent is that in the end, it's composing itself as a deck, right? So
Space.
that's good. So. Any other thoughts? I just want to make sure Mr. Sewell has an opportunity to provide some thoughts on it.
No additional comments.
So materiality, I just kind of maybe turn back to the applicant. So materiality for the deck. Is that something that you know if this ePay material has the ability to be a tongue and groove solution that would give us the appropriate plank sizes? That would be a typical porch
Porch floor,
porch floors.
okay, porch floor, I would have just used pine. She doesn't want a porch floor.
Completely understand.
She wants her deck to be just like her deck is now.
Completely.
And then the water can drain through it to the ground and it doesn't have to sit on top of the tongue and groove surface. It's not an enclosed porch. It has a roof, but it was never built that way. The house was built 2009. It's not an old historical property and it was built to look as appropriate as possible, but it's actually not an older home. And she just wants the deck to be the deck. If it has to be a floor, I can tongue and groove, hard pine. I mean, I could get that rather easily and paint it
You're
again.
saying it's deck material now?
Correct.
Which is the deck material.
Correct.
So then why aren't you just replacing in kind? You don't even have to deal with it.
Well, I want to replace it with something that's maintenance free. And we've tried Trex, AZEX, all the different options of the newer materials. Some of the AZEX looks exactly like wood. You couldn't tell it a difference. It has no raised grain on it.
Just looking at the images here.
Yeah.
As it relates to, the application of the images.
Yeah.
He's right, it does have a gap.
Yeah, it does.
So, which is quite interesting.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, the other thing we could always do is you could throw it out there and use it as a test picture.
Yes.
I mean, that's probably the best way to go. But we gotta trust you, you're gonna do a good test.
up the best.
Why wouldn't?
Well, then I think that's probably what we should do. But now that I've seen that.
Yeah, I mean, I was all for putting a floor down. I mean, this has been.
It's odd, but if it was built that way, you can't.
Yeah.
If we do travel down that path, I think the one thing that's quite different is, I think the goal is trying that it doesn't look like a deck, right? So it has a lot to do with the depth, through the street, the streetscape kind of presence in the back. So I think what's interesting, if you look at the existing porch, there's a fascia component that comes up the end grade.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I would picture frame it.
Okay,
Picture frame the top deck.
so you.
yeah.
Picture frame the top there,
Yeah.
get the fascia on there, that steps
Yeah,
back.
yeah.
Okay. That would be closer in kind to the existing.
Yeah, it's not that way now, but these are the cut ends. You see what I mean? They're a little, I mean,
Yeah.
that's a little rough. I would, this is what the profile you would see if I go around the outer perimeter with it on the top before I lay the deck in.
So would you be able to provide probably a revised sketch to just kind of?
I can get a picture of a perimeter. Yeah.
Is there any other thoughts? I know we just talked about the deck. Is there any other thoughts about railings or anything of that nature? I did have a question on the railing, just looking at the section. The section is quite different than the existing railing. And so just in terms of its proportion, I can see that we were trying to mimic a kind of a decorative black railing type kind of concept, but it seems like the bottom rail, like shoe rail, and the top rail, they have kind of a thinner profile because the board is laid on its side in lieu of the board being vertical. So I understand the goal, but I think that's a durability issue. Long term, I don't think that they're going to be, happy with that. And it kind of starts to stray from, the appearance of the existing home itself. So would you be able to, with the same materials that are being proposed, mimic the existing porch railing?
I can make it look like that. I don't think she was quite, obviously she wanted a thin profile. But if it has to be that, so I don't,
With the top cap railing?
well, I think he wants something vertical coming down 2 or 3 inches
Yeah.
off the rail and same thing at the bottom.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. Okay. Just something observation, guys. So I don't know if you guys feel the same. I agree. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, those are the only items that it seemed like that, the rest of it was in kind. So is there a motion or someone can kind of articulate those thoughts? Seems like maybe a section drawing could be provided, to staff, and she could just confirm, these elements of it. being carried. If Kim has any concerns, she can reach back out to us. But I don't think there'd be a subcommittee to kind of review that because what we're trying to do is trying to get the details back. There's things that are documented in that.
Great.
Their motion by any chance?
Direct motion to approve, following conditions, the EPA material used as a test case material on the floor decking, to match light incoming, the railing to increase the top and bottom rail to a profile moving existing, and the railing to move a single color.
Is that what maybe so in terms of test was about the UAV specifically? So,
You were about, yeah.
Yes, that's material.
Did you mention the picture frame and that detail?
Sorry, on the decking to provide a sketch to staff for approval for picture frame around the edge of the deck material.
sorry.
Sorry. Any discussion on this? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks, you guys.
Thanks,
Appreciate it.
thanks.
And if you need anything.
Oh, yes. I never get confused. I can tend to circle back. Your memorization is better than mine is.
Okay.
All right, we are moving on to application number 4. This is 1135 Yale Avenue. The proposed work includes variances, specifically for parking, 6 spaces are required, 3 are provided. Side yard, 5 foot is required, 4 foot is provided, as well as new construction, which would include new 3-story family side-by-side townhouse and to construct a new 3-story single family carriage house. I would include the 3-story apartments from the July 4th hearing. Just have, as I noted before, the applicant submit the 1922 sample map and was for a newspaper image of the drawing, which illustrates the proposed drawing's massing matches the historic at the hearing. The standards for new construction state that new construction shall be of brick, 1 brick per dwellings in nearby structures. The surrounding street has predominantly brick structures, though there are a few frame structures. Now, new construction should not be historicized, so a hardy siding might be more appropriate than brick in the case if the applicant wants to push a more modern design, especially with that original massing being recalled. Commissioners at the business meeting requested a more detailed landscaping plan to include details such as trees, bushes, etc. Multiple public comments have requested that there be no setbacks allowed, brick or lap siding used and it's predominantly been called fluted brick. And additional details be included such as transom, doors, lights, railings, etc. Now, HBO staff noticed that for duplex, it's awful odd that there's kitchens on the 1st and 2nd floors. So per previous public speakers, the program needs to be revised to reflect the city occupancy. So realistically, those are supposed to be townhouses. They shouldn't have kitchens on the floors. So staff recommends continuation of the application to allow for the applicant to take into consideration previous commissioner comments and HBO staff comments as well as guidelines in city code prior to revising the drawings. Basis for recommendation is 3616.12, the standards for new construction, Victorian village guidelines on new constructions noting what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. Before we swear in our applicants here, I will note we do have a couple of speakers. And I will note to the people in the audience, if anybody has not emailed me or gotten in the speakers list yet, now is your time to do it. But I've got 3 so far.
Would you just state your name?
Peter Navarro.
Ingrid Navarro.
Bradley Blumenscheid?
You can tell the truth and nothing but the truth.
Yes.
Yes.
One thing before we start, I would like to correct the preservation officer. There is no kitchen on the 2nd floor.
Can you do me a favor about the site plan? I thought there was. And I want to make sure that I'm not going crazy, which is always a great.
Which is, it's okay. It's a good clarification. The programming was a good topic of discussion last time.
Okay, I'm seeing things. Thank you. But stay.
Awesome.
Very nice.
So for any of our neighbors here today that weren't here for the last meeting, for anybody else who wasn't here for the last meeting, I just want to reiterate that we are personally, professionally vested in the neighborhood and that we've been a part of the neighborhood for over the last 12 years. If you have any question about our work, about the homes that we've either built in the neighborhood or that we've renovated, I would gladly send you links to that. Our number one goal is to design a home that carries its own special mark as well as fits in harmoniously with the surrounding homes. We feel that this design is a nod to the historic home that used to be on that lot decades ago. An elaborate color scheme, paint scheme, and a detailed garden will bring that 2D to life. So it may be a little bit hard to see the detail of it now, but that's what we just want to convey, that when we add those things in, it's going to look much different. We're doing our best to address the concerns of our neighbors. I want to just briefly touch on a couple things that repeatedly come up, and I think it's going to be a long road for some of these things. But for the trees, taking down the mature trees, we received professional advice that it's unsafe to leave the mature trees given that the root structure will be cut into. And then we would gladly replace any of the trees we remove on our lot. But I think there's going to be a lot of planning for that, for removal and the way forward. For the parking setback, we did change that to make it within the same range as our neighbors, and Bradley will touch on that in more detail. And then the variances, I know that there was some comments at the previous meeting stating that, we were asking for undue hardship and excessive variances, but all of the variances that we requested are standard requests when it comes to building in the neighborhood because of the size and the narrowness of the lots. And Bradley will further elaborate on the design and changes.
Well, one thing on the trees too, which no matter if we shrink it, let's say the setbacks 10 feet, we're still going to be taking the root system. So it's, that was one question where it's like, hey, why don't you just do 5 or 3 feet or have a setback? We can have 10 feet and we're still cutting into the system, which the trees need to go. So I think that was one thing where it's like the setbacks were a question, but if we can do 10 feet and it'll still be the same outcome for those 4 trees.
So the packet is split up into 3 parts. First part are the 2 variances that we're requesting endorsements for. One is a side yard setback from 5 foot to 4 foot on the north side. The other is the minimum parking requirement from 6 to 3. We originally didn't need the parking variance, but when moving the carriage house closer to the alley, we lost those 3 parking spaces, which kicked in that new variance. So we took some time and looked at the commissioner's comments from last month, which, judging from the outcome that we came up with, it actually is quite a vast improvement. Changing the proportions of the windows, I reevaluated the fascia where the roof and wall meet, made it a little more robust and fit better within the neighborhood. We took a second look at the railings around the front porch, changed the balusters, added a little bit more detail to that. We came up with a landscape plan as requested to give better idea of the context of what this building will look like. I changed around the roof configuration from last time to better fit within the massing along the street. as far as the carriage house is concerned, we went down the alley and we measured all the fascia and peak heights for all of the adjacent carriage houses. And actually, there's a single family house directly across the alley that's 2.5 stories. And we put together a elevation along that back alley to give our carriage house some context. And on sheet B 2.4, you can see the existing carriage houses and our carriage house, how it fits in within that block of carriage houses along the alley. Now, as far as the programming is concerned, these are just single family houses, 3 beds. I'm not really sure how else to address whatever concerns the commissioners or neighbors might have with the program. Bedroom closet space is limited in historic districts, and we wanted to make nice bedroom sizes with nice closet spaces. And the program is pretty standard. It's not anything super elaborate or extravagant. It's not 5 bedrooms or anything crazy like that. It's just 3 beds, 2 units with the carriage house in the back. So yeah, that's where we landed for this month.
Yes, I'm gonna call them in the order they were received, so Andy Gardner. As a reminder, you've got 3 minutes, but we're not starting until you start. Yes, please.
Thank you. Andy Gardner. The Untitled Chapter. Yes, thank you, Suzanne. I appreciate the opportunity to speak regarding the proposed project at 1135 Yale Avenue. Also, I'd like to thank the new commission members, along with current commission members, for volunteering their time and maintaining the high standards of development for the Victorian Village Historic District. I'd like to speak to a couple comments that were made at last July's meeting, as I was not able to attend. The property owners stated they have 12 years experience working in the short north area and experience working with historic commissions. Additionally, they said they know it can be time consuming and cause significant work. Is this why they attempted to kind of go around the commission and go directly to city council in May for variance approvals that did not have certificate of appropriateness? 1016, 1018 Yale Avenue was the next to last buildable lot on Yale Avenue. That developer presented plans for a brick duplex with some transom detailing. It was at that meeting that it was important to the commissioners and the property was constructed of brick. It's being suggested that since 1135 Yale Avenue was the last buildable lot, they are being held to a higher standard. What is being asked to be built is an appropriate structure to the surrounding brick homes within the established side yard setbacks. There has been discussion about roof lines, other features, so it blends with neighboring homes. If the property is to blend in with surrounding home, then it needs to be built not of hardy plank, but of brick. Even though the commission has suggested other materials, each plan reflects hardy plank. This speaks to the developer's unwillingness to spend the money that would fulfill the edict per city code that states the commission shall consider, in addition to any other permanent factors, the historical, architectural value and significance of architectural style, general design, arrangement, texture, material, and color of exterior architectural package of other structures in the immediate neighborhood. This was further demonstrated when the idea of other materials was brought up by Mr. Decker in the May meeting. The architect said, and I quote, "We're not going to go forward with brick. As far as design guidelines are concerned, the hardy is an appropriate material." I feel this is disrespectful to the process and to the commission. If I read the plans correctly, they did move the carriage house in line with other carriage houses and garage along the alley and reduce the overall height by 3 feet 7 inches. However, this carriage house is larger than any adjacent home on Harrison. Total square footage, including the garage, is over 2,000 square feet and still has 3 bedrooms and 2.5 baths. This is far too big for the property and is another example of what has already been deemed a mistake by the commission at the last couple of meetings. As a final thought, each duplex has 4 bedrooms with the ability to add a 5th bedroom in the basement. If allowed, a 3-bedroom carriage house That would make 13 bedrooms on the property, or potentially 20 to 30 occupants at any one time.
It's 3 minutes, sir. I truly appreciate
I
it.
have one last sentence, please, and then I'm done.
I'll give them the last sentence.
One sentence,
As long as it's okay with you.
and no more than one.
Yes, thank you.
This project isn't about the neighbors or the neighborhood, but the owner's profit. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Right? And then I have Mike Spencer.
State your name.
Mike Spencer?
Introduce yourself, truly, nothing but the truth.
I do.
Thank you, sir.
Right, before you begin, I typically don't accept additional materials. I turn it over to the commission. Would you like to see these? We can pass them out.
Yes.
It's a picture of an example.
Well, with COVID guidelines, we've been a little bit pristine here. This is why I like to present to the commissioners because it typically helps.
I think it's, yeah.
Right.
So,
I feel comfortable.
I guess.
all right.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Whenever you are ready, sir.
Thanks.
Okay, I reside at 1123 Yale Avenue. That is one house removed from the proposed project and on the same side of the street. I went through this process 20 years ago for my new construction project fronting Yale Avenue on my empty lot at the time. I was made to concentrate on designing within the confines of immediate neighbors on the same side of the street. Jeffrey was sitting there 20 years ago.
Jeez.
You haven't aged a bit. At the time, I proposed a non-brick, multi-family structure fronting Yale Avenue. And I have a 50-foot wide lot. The commission kicked my ass at the time,
Which,
demonstrating the importance and significance of a single-family structure on this block of Yale Avenue and the absolute requirement of brick due to my immediate neighbors and our side of the street. The difference here is a developer not living on the site, trying to maximize the number of rental units and bedrooms on what is clearly a single-family lot. Everyone sees this. 13 bedrooms and 3 units on this site. Come on. This is not High Street. And there's no way there should be a sun porch running Yale Avenue. The applicant said it themselves at the last meeting that there are only a couple of these along Yale Avenue, helping make the point that there shouldn't be any more. I brought in a recent picture of 868 Yale Avenue as an example of that. And this is what you will have with a sun porch facing Yale Avenue. Lawn chairs, coolers, liquor bottles, beer cans, grills, towels hanging on the railings. And of the few sun porches that do front Yale Avenue, mostly south of First Avenue, they are all brick structures. Commission has an oath to keep. Mr. Whiteman spoke about this at the last meeting, especially with the rise of short-term rentals. In recent meetings, my blue carriage house has been affectionately referred to as a grave state. Yes, Mr. Decker. This project would be the gravest of grave mistakes. Do not support anything from brick. Do not support a multifamily structure fronting Yale Avenue. Do not support side yard or parking variances. Do not support a sun porch fronting Yale Avenue. Nothing personal, but if the applicant can't afford brick for this new construction, this project does not belong on Yale Avenue. Thank you for your time.
and last I have Ken Whitman.
Go ahead and state your name, sir. Go ahead and state your name, sir.
Ken Whitman.
Do you confirm to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you, sir.
I'm sorry to have to be back again this month. Hope you don't have to be back again next month. You know, you've heard from I think every neighbor nearby this house. Nobody is in support of this project. Nobody's encouraged by it. Nobody likes it. They think it's inappropriate.
You've got two more neighbors who come forward this week. You've also received written documents, letters from neighbors who cannot be here. We don't understand why you're putting up with this. This is conspicuously inappropriate for the neighborhood, the properties, so many different levels. The developers are seeking variances when there's no hardship. They don't have to have these variances. They should be able to build a project that fits the neighborhood without the variances. And they should be able to conform with neighborhood properties. Last speaker spoke very clearly what he had to go through to build in the same block. And these developers are totally inconsistent with that standard that was set by a commission, the Victorian Village Commission previously. I hate to have to come back month after month and hear that they're making little minor tweaks to the changes. It's a waste of your time and your patience. It's also an unreasonable burden on the neighbors who have spoken clearly in opposition to this. Your job is not to negotiate with the developers. It's time to just say no. I hope you can do that. Thank you.
Yes.
So,
Can you confirm there was two email?
Yes, there were only 2 emails this time. I did not receive any additional ones since I came down here at 3. But if there's anything that was submitted after, I might still forward that on. I'm not sure if there will be.
great. All right, so open up to discussion. So anybody wants to go first? Just being able to add some comments and style regarding this application.
In an effort of efficiency, if you don't mind, Kim, can you clarify what staff's recommendation is on here? I see we've month after month had lots of iterations here, and so rather than us kind of jumping on different topics,
Yeah, so,
I'd like to know what's being proposed and then what will ultimately.
so I do suggest continuing again so we can get final tweaks, but in terms of materiality, which I know has been a very large thing for our residents around here, but it does say in the code where brick predominates, it should be built with brick. Brick predominates on the side of the street. So realistically, this house should probably be designed out of brick, which I know that changes how windows and doors are as well, because we recently went from brick to metal and Italian. That was an interesting swap, but I know that is a large design change as well, but I do think most of the street is brick, this should be brick as well. Our applicants and designers, I do think they took a lot of the comments into consideration. They provided us an updated landscape plan. And I know the trees are a consideration, and I know from listening to some of the other landscape architects who disturb that root system, that tree is only going to last a couple of years. If that, which we do typically ask, if a tree comes down, a tree is replaced in like kind. So if there's a number of trees and we can replace them in like kind, I know there's a lot of programs going on, so we might have to resolve with some scale of some of the trees. Landscaping details, if that's something the commission wants to site plan. But the windows have also been improved because those got a little bit longer, so the applicant has been working with us as well.
So to be clear, the basis of the continuation is, I know you mentioned earlier that there was a kitchen on the second floor. Which
Yeah, it wasn't the kitchen, that was my fault of me not reading things on the site plans, which unfortunately happens.
Okay, and I apologize, I want to be clear on this. So what exactly is the request, and then what is the reason for the continuation?
So the reason for the continuation is the other brick. I think there's might be some smaller details. Keep in mind, it has been a while since I've looked at this and turning over Italian. There were a couple of parts going on. So we can continue it, or if there are aspects that the commission thinks are close enough, I am willing to take this. Something to work with staff or something to go with to the subcommittee.
If I may ask the applicants a question for clarification here, what exactly is it that you all are requesting? Does that help clarify this?
Yeah, so,
Okay.
so I guess let's go back to the 3 months, because you were saying like, hey, we're continuing, and what's the end result? The first thing when we presented, Commissioner Decker is like, hey, if you're gonna go in this direction, I'm paraphrasing, it's like, hey, we have to get more detail, which we provided. So the stuff that we started 3 months ago, even 4 months ago, where Commissioner Decker was saying, hey, if you're going to go with a wood structure, then please present us with what is here today. So, because that was one thing that the historic preservation is saying, it's like, hey, it needs to be this. But at the same time, we're going off what the commissioners have been kind of telling us. Even Jeff was saying, hey, we're doing the tweaks and changes that we're getting the feedback, but now it's turning over where it's like, you know what, it should go back 4 months ago. So it's,
I apologize for cutting you off here, but back to my question is,
yeah.
what exactly are you requesting here? And then what are we seeking to approve here?
So we're requesting, so it can be a party wood structure, and we can move forward with, if you're gonna say, hey, you need to tweak the back of the house with transoms or something. You know, we want to have an approval, so it's like, hey, this is the product, and then how do we tweak it?
One more time.
So,
I think
The variances too.
okay, so let me help there.
Hold on. That's my point here, is that here we are 3 or 4 months later, and we still don't know today what exactly it is that you want. So are we approving a parking variance? Do you want us to approve a side yard variance? Do you want us to-
Yes.
We want to
Everything.
see everything.
We don't want to be here every month.
Right, exactly. So to avoid us coming back and doing this for another 3 or 4 months, I think it makes sense for us to break this up and say, okay, you are requesting a side variance, a parking variance, and this.
Right.
So then now we all discuss those 3 topics and approve or reject those topics. But otherwise, we're back to materiality right now. And that's
Yeah.
something we discussed when Debbie was here.
Right.
And so I'm sure to you guys, it's a shock that we're now back to materiality, but nonetheless. So I say all of this, and that we can continue this for 3 or 4 months at this rate. And so I'm trying to, I think it makes sense
We
for
just
us.
need
to say,
clarity.
here's
Well,
what you're requesting.
we are shocked right now with how she said that, where it's like, this is it. I'm like, wait. We were in continuance because we understood that we need to bring a little more to the details, which we are bringing. So that the way her statement earlier, that is a shock to us, that it's now we're resorting back to what Commissioner Siwa was saying. It's like, we're back to material.
I defer to the chair.
I understand. Thank you, Mr. Seaver. So just got thinking about here, I agree in terms of being able to kind of break it down possibly. But the only problem is, I think that it's hard to divorce the design and from those other elements that they're going to seek approval on. Because in the past, if I'm not mistaken, the design, so to speak, in the merit of the design, actually kind of falls in alignment with, or starts the process of rolling in those other thoughts.
The
Right.
variance.
Variances, things of that nature. So it's hard to separate them. So I think that was probably the basis of maybe some of those earlier commission conversations. Again, it's speculating, but I'm presuming that was the reason. If I'm paraphrasing Mr. Decker, and I'm only because I was not present, but at the same time, just trying to catch up and I did hear that here. And it seems as though that there was discussion about materiality as it relates to possibly deviating from brick, but the merits of the design with an alternate material than brick had to accompany the design. And so it seems like it was warranted to allow maybe the applicant to provide a solution that met those requirements to evaluate those requirements. And if this is the result, I think that's the discussion thing. Just that's my take on it in terms of the turnout.
But you're also absolutely correct. In the process of breaking it down, you would say it's about parking and it's about variances, something else, and that would not go forward. That would throw the whole design into a different function. Or instead, we're just voting on the landscape plan. So I think what you asked them is a good question. What do you want? How do you see it being broken down? And because you've heard, and it's not unusual for the tide to turn in these meetings.
Absolutely.
This is, I mean, the Kaufman project has been here for I don't know how long, and they kept getting beat back to square one also. So I think it's our process, and yeah, I think we have to stay true to it.
I agree with that point. I just, if I were standing in their shoes, I would be frustrated when I think about, we have a discussion that it doesn't necessarily have to be brick. And then the next discussion is, well, now we're going back in the direction that it needs to be brick. But then long story short, I think we'll continue to do this for 3-4 months if we go at this rate, because I don't think there's been progress on the various things that they've requested. And so finally, at this point in time, I don't think any of us can say what exactly is it that they're asking us to do, and what exactly are we ultimately going to evaluate and approve. And I'm basing that on, the code ultimately, and the guidelines is where I land on this. So I'm happy to continue down this path. I pay very close attention to this matter, and I've attended all the business meetings, and we've stayed late. And it's unfortunate that we find ourselves here to meet, given the amount of time that we put into it. But I'm happy for us to continue down this path. I just want to go on record. Go ahead.
So to answer your question, we're looking for variance endorsement, approval of the house and approval of the carriage house in the most basic sense. We've gone several months. I think this project is a lot different than the Kaufman project. This is a house with a carriage house. So scale is obviously a factor, but several months ago, we were led to believe, yes, if we go down the stick-built path, we add detail, we make it more robust, a more robust and detailed design, then we follow the yellow brick road and we can get to a point where this could be approved. So to revert back to brick is a surprise, because we've been led to believe for several months that going down this path is the right path. And we've spent a lot of time looking at the different details, doing a lot of contextual research to make sure that this does fit within the streetscape.
The one thing too, and Commissioner Sebo, I think when it first brought up, you were, don't quote me, but you were actually not, I would say, not kind of in favor. It's like, hey, you're up to, or saying you would open your opinion or say yes to a wood structure there, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
Okay, so it's.
Or I did not necessarily say wood structure, but a non-brick structure.
Right, a non-brick structure, yes. So it's even to the extent now what has transpired is, we want to get this approved and then work on, more of a detail, because, just like you said, the Kaufman group, they came back, say, hey, this is approved, and then they come back and have more detail. So we have a path forward. That's what we're trying to do today.
And when you say a variance approval, you are only seeking a side yard variance approval. You're no longer seeking the parking variance.
No, the parking as well.
Parking as well.
Yes.
I think that's the result of the carriage house getting the back, the setback.
Right.
The adjacent properties. So if that's the case, if we want to, understandable. So with the 4 items, we want to comment on the 4 items and talk about the 4 items. So which was the first one is the kind of variance endorsement.
I've been talking a lot, so. A lot of other issues that have-
I'm fine with breaking those into a part. So there's a lot, there's variance too. I mean,
I'd like to break down a few of them just for discussion. It's not- Being someone new to the game, this application, I'm curious of the justification for the side. So the width of the lot is 45 feet. And we were asking for a 1 foot encroachment into the north side yard setback. The north house is further away than the south house is, to give enough space for the bedroom and living quarters inside the house.
And,
It makes a surprisingly big difference.
and also to the north, or I'm sorry, to the south property, it was divided. So 5 feet went to the south property and left 5 feet less on this lot.
That was at least 20 years ago.
It was divided by the previous, owner of that property.
And then
Or a previous owner of that, but he had, when he sold us the property, he had like stipulations, like there was a porch that encroached onto the vacant lot, and there was wording in our sale that said that the south neighbor would have to, at some point in time, move that encroaching paved area that was part of their porch. They would have to move that back whenever they were notified that somebody was gonna build. So at some point in time, this, somebody owned these 2 lots, and then they changed the lot size.
We have a point of order, and you can't speak out in the audience. I mean, we've given you your 3 minutes, so in fairness, to keep this in order.
Thank you, Mr. Sloan.
So the side, yes, so we did that because the side yard is more about the setting temperature. Trees, my opinion as well. I agree with the statement of whether it's 10 feet from the setback or that setback, these trees are, zones are going to be compromised and that is problematic for those trees. I would like to see if it's moving forward to see some kind of gesture of replacement.
So next item will be any other comments on the side yard?
The side yard, I saw the vision of the side yard, I think that's to the design of the program. We've talked about program, everything. And one of the speakers mentioned, we're looking at 5 groups. So I think the scale of that massing is still overly sized for what it is. The location, I think, can work. The trees, anything that can develop on this piece of property is going to be destroyed through also. It doesn't matter. On the job. So I think the replacement point for that. I think the concern that I have about doing the footprint is the massive issue that we could get back to and come to Sean's point, as we break each of these down, we kind of come back to the design constraints. So,
I just want to go back to 20 years ago. We did stand up, and we did make that structure brick. But the other thing that I go back to Kaufman was the same situation, scale. It was about the height, it was about the massing, and it was about the program. If any of you guys remember this. And some variances were passed, some variances were not passed, which then had made them rethink of what they were doing. So this is a roundabout game, and I know it's not a comfortable game. But when you look at, and it is true, we said program, that is a lot of bedrooms, the parking setback. it all leads to think that, no, it's not gonna be a two-family house, it's gonna be something different than that, which is bringing a different thing into the neighborhood. And we can only look at the architectural merits. We can't look at the program areas so much. So I think it does go back, if you don't let the side yard, you don't let the parking, then the client has to do something different if they want to continue.
Question, how many bedrooms will be on this premises?
Four on the, I'll go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Go ahead. Four, well, den or bedroom, four in the main house for each unit, and then, three in the carriage house.
It's zoned for 4 units.
And it's zoned for 4,
Yeah,
for
it's-
R4 for the property.
And we're putting in 3.
That's what the total is 11.
Yes.
Yes. With the option of a fifth in the basement.
Right.
Two of the basement. The instruction. Mr. Seaman, do you have anything else to add on the side yard? I'm just go ahead and offer some comments on those.
No.
As far as the side yard, I would agree. I think the side yard, I think that was the item that last time we were talking about, just massing and being able to, assist in the massing. From that standpoint, is really the overall width or the width of the proposed structure. So the 5 yard kind of off. It gives me a little, I'm a little concerned related to that as it relates to the programming and the number of bedrooms and such. So I think that we had kind of challenged early on is how do you solve the two-family approach with the constraints of the lot? So I think that was the initial premise when we had this kind of first conversation. And so I seem to think that that's still the premise but at the same time, without being able to utilize the variance and stuff. It's just kind of, as far as the parking, variance, whatever that adjustment is, I think it's just from a massing strategy standpoint, I think that you've made some great steps in the carriage house to bring it back in alignment, which is appropriate. So the resultant of reprogramming, the resultant of not addressing or not having to address or not doing the side yard variance, then I would probably start to be able to look at the parking. So I think that's the result of the reprogram. Hopefully that was. Okay. Seems. So that's parking variances. Do we want to continue and talk about the carriage house or the home, or do we want to address materiality just to go ahead and get it on the table?
Again, playing through that card here, just going back to the mission material. Strategy of what's around it. I question at high level, when are you break? Stretch of 5 houses, stretch of 2 houses that are breaking, one that's not. At what point can you break that? Certainly examples, Yale Avenue. So I think that's a high level question. Trying to answer myself. When is it to break? Celebrate the non-conformity of
I think that's a good question. I think that just kind of thinking about some of the comments that have been offered, specifically the chat, I think it's predominant. It's like predominant, the amount of quantity of the adjacency in that context that kind of starts to flag up. I don't know if there's necessarily a set of rules as it relates to what's appropriate to the which I think is to Mr. Siegel's point is that I think that's what the ultimate is. Hey, there may be an opportunity of something other than that. We'll just have to evaluate the merits of what the results are. So I think that obviously that's what's being proposed.
And that's one of the reasons why we walked down Yale Avenue and recorded the percentage of brick to wood siding homes on each block. And our block actually has the most wood siding homes. So and we couldn't find anything to suggest that the historic home that was there, what material it was, so.
So any other thoughts on materiality? Comments from the commission?
What do we talk, what, so let me just, what's the difference between, cost-wise, what's the difference between party and?
So I do want to note for the record, we don't consider costs on this.
It's usually double.
Double?
It's usually double, especially at today's material. I think everyone knows, like material wise, it's just, when I priced it out, it was probably around double. Now it's probably even more, due to supply and demand.
Just from a state, just from my own personal, I think, you know, again, the opportunity of an alternate material. Wasn't necessarily opposed to it, but just being able to understand what that result looked like in the end. And so I think that we talked about possibly, you know, brick would actually yield something a little bit more simplified in terms of being, you know, the end result. So I guess when you evaluate the result, I think I'm leaning towards, you know, being back to the brick solution as being the solution. I think I challenged even last month, I think I challenged the hardened, just the use of hardened. Is there other materials and things of that nature? I think to some of the neighbors' points that, you know, hardened is back on the main home again. So I think I would like to see a brick solution. That's just, this is a person.
So question, what has driven you back to a brick solution?
It wasn't necessarily, I shouldn't say driven me back to, I think just evaluating the merits of the current design against potentially what could be done at brick. That's the nature of it. So,
And the merits of that design is based on the overall program that's leading you to it?
I guess I'm evaluating the sense of reference of the result, right, the result. So whether it be, you know, if you remove a couple bedrooms and then now this thing is thinner, that's a different merit, you know, so I guess, you know, I can't, it's tough to it's tough to kind of, I should say it's tough to not to just review the current elevation as a result. It's because there's always the what if.
Right.
I think when we were first looking at the one option, the detailing wasn't there. So what we're seeing is the result, the iterative design process to get us to what could be still considered part of that get out of the party with the detailing in here and show the legwork, but I kind of tend to agree with Sean. It still feels now like what we've gotten to is a great Victorian solution that doesn't fit inside of the context for the adjacent neighbors there. So, I mean, this could be extremely appropriate in the suburb or something like that, that is kind of trying to mimic what it was. So I think the applicant has responded consistently to things that we've been trying to see, because until we got to that level, we couldn't really evaluate what it needed to be.
So hypothetically speaking, if we were looking at this and the carriage house shrunk and the garage did not have 5 bedrooms on top of it, and the overall appearance of this, this structure, to simplify it, was smaller, is it that would lead you in the direction of it doesn't necessarily need to be brick? So is it just the overall, there's a lot going on here?
Fair question. I don't necessarily feel that.
I don't think so. I don't think that. Now that we've gone through this puzzle,
No, sir.
Hold on, repeat that.
now that we've gone through this puzzle of piece,
Right.
whole piece apart, piece fits better.
Oh, so to your point, right, if this shrunk, just generally speaking, does that get you to this does not necessarily need to be a brick structure or no?
No, sir.
Okay.
So it sounds like after seeing the evolution of this option, that given the context of brick is the appropriate solution here regardless.
Yes.
So I'm just going to note, I know our applicant said that here, I remember. Preferably when we get through this process, we'd like it to take a little less than, 3 months that it has, but of course. I would like to thank our applicants for their patience, and I want to also thank Commissioner Sebo for leading us down the discussion and giving us too low for definite answers. I do also want to note the time, I just want us to be aware that Untitled Chapter has to leave at 6.
Understand.
Mr. Seymour, that help?
So we're back to his original position on the table, and that's, what are we trying to do here? What does the client want? Do we want to vote on variances? Do we want to cut them up? What do we want to do? Do we want movement, or do you want to go back and rethink this and then come back? That's what the office basically suggested.
I would like, for whatever feedback we're given, both for everybody's peace of mind, that next month, we can vote on something for approval. Because this has been a while. And hopefully with the comments and the discussion we have, we are there. Commissioners, just know I might be reaching out to make sure I have. Perfect. So there's no confusion for our applicants or for me.
As I said before, I would be happy throwing up the variances, because variances, either they pass or they don't. If they don't pass, it changes the whole game. If you want to hear what that is, we can do that.
Is that something that you want us to do in terms of being able to, right now, obviously, you're asking for one application, against the project and then recommendation on the variances. Obviously, the recommendation on the variances has, that has an impact to what you can do based on that recommendation.
Right.
Is that
So
beneficial to?
what you guys have brought up issues of program. And I equate that as use. So it sounds like you have an issue with a duplex on Yale Avenue. Because to fit a duplex on Yale Avenue, this is the width that we need. So if the program is the issue and you don't want us to do a duplex on Yale Avenue, then the building shrinks, we don't need side yard variance. And it's a moot point. So I'm still a little confused as to what you mean by program, because I have those assumptions, but I don't know if that's actually what you guys mean. What do you mean by program? Because we have the plans drawn out as 2 single-family houses in the front, single-family house in the back. What are the concerns about the program itself? And that could really help inform us as to, do we even need these variances if we start making changes to that program? Do you understand?
Yes, that makes sense. So, just for me, I think it's just a number of bedrooms, right? So, and not necessarily looking at the program in terms of a duplex or a multifamily or the labs. It's not that. It's like, I think that the program impacts the result. And so the scale of the overall width and the scale of the proposed home is a result of the program. So in order to solve that or address the side yard variance, is you have to adjust the scale. You can't just continue to squeeze. Sooner or later, something has to be removed. So that's just for the current home. As far as the scale and the number of bedrooms for the carriage house, I think it's, again, the number of bedrooms and the need for the 2.5 is a result of the program. So in order to get back in alignment to a 1.5 or 2-story, sort of type of carriage house, program, so to speak, has to be at least conceptually removed. So I think that for me, I think that's.
Right, and that was a question that I was asking, and I think you've articulated it beautifully. And I understand that better now. So based on what you've just stated, if it was to that point, the way you've just described that, are you still at the position that the materiality needs to be brick? understanding you're not looking at, I understand you're not looking at what I'm describing, but.
I can't answer. Again, because of merits of looking at the result.
Right.
So I just know that, you know, from what we heard from staff is, you know, parties like deciding solution. This is just not the right and appropriate solution.
Keep in mind, you are allowed to disagree with me.
Right.
Understand.
And I am just going with the materiality aspect of this, going back to our very first meeting, and we discussed this, and I think we have led these folks to believe that a non-brick option was the path that they were going down. And I encourage us all to go back and watch the tape and listen to because
Yeah.
I paid very close attention to this, and if I were in their shoes, I don't think it's necessarily fair if we're going back, and I get we go back and forth with this, but if we're going back to the position that this has to be brick, and if that's the case, then I think that should have been clear 3 months ago. Once again, if I were them, because this is the path that they've been led down. So that's why I've been pretty passionate articulating this out, this situation is that, once again, if we're now in a position of this needs to be brick, based upon whatever reasoning that is, we're now sending them right back to month one when we first started this process.
I think for each time they come, we mention her, we ask them about that discussion and then offer design improvements to what we were looking at. And
But there was also comments pushing us toward other materials.
So just in order to try to move forward, I mean, completely, Mr. Steele, just trying to alleviate the back and forth. I mean, you guys have, this has been an awesome dialogue, creative dialogue, but we just trying to move forward.
Yeah.
Also,
Hold on for a second. Is there, I mean, that was my position on answering that question regarding program. I mean, so is there others that feel that way, based upon the gentleman's, question, in terms of being able to clarify the program? But I think that was the discussion.
I agree with you that I don't have issues with multifamily site, but I do challenge the question again, the scale factor, each level program, but it's driving, it's not getting set back. But it's
right, Commissioner, so if you look at,
Sir,
well,
I know, I'm sorry. I truly appreciate it.
but I know, but at the same time, you're saying program, and if you look at SP.1, on the site plan, that the house to the south is actually longer, and we're just 3 feet wider than that house. And it's a single family house.
His point he's making is, I agree with both of you on that point. And I've paid very close attention to this. I will go back and listen to all the tape on this situation. I believe we had driven them in the direction that this does not necessarily need to be brick. And that's also based upon the housing directly across the street. There are several houses that are not brick directly across the street. But I agree with you with respect to both of you, with respect to the program and the appearance of what's going on here. So yeah, 11 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms on top of a carriage house. Those aspects of this is concerning.
So I'm going to put it out there because there's a lot of discussion going on. We need to have a special meeting. We do need to specifically carve out time to meet in person.
I'd be more than happy to do that.
Yeah.
Sure.
I would say hopefully before the next hearing. I do have some time out of the office, but I want to make sure that's okay with you. Because
The one thing too is, I do want on staff to pass is, that gate.
So the code violation,
That is the entrance to the property.
yes. So code the code officer does know that you are interviewed for this property.
Right.
And I think that once we have an approved design, that wrought iron gate is going to be removed.
Correct.
So I will keep in touch with the code officer.
Okay.
So just so he knows you are still working through this review
All right.
process. But
Sounds good.
until we have a finalized design.
Well, that's actually the entrance to the property. And since we're here, and I don't know if is it staff approval then for that gate?
The removal of these.
Not the gate, but it's actually the entrance to get into the property, the front entrance.
So to explain this to the commission a little bit, they had cut off part of the wrought iron gate with staff approval, and they are in the middle of this process. So it's implied that that's going to be removed at some time. Would commission be okay if I staff approve that, or do you want to hold off until we have anything?
That's sort of like demolition.
No, it
No.
was the entrance.
It's the entrance to the
We cut the
property.
Yeah,
entrance.
so just taking away that part of the wrought iron.
Yeah, we're not taking away. Yeah, it was just to enter.
No.
We actually thought it was a gate there and we thought there were steps and we cleared out the brush, the vines, and there was no steps. And the gate was actually,
It was fixed.
it was fixed.
Let you get into
So
the
we
property instead
cut
of going
the-
to the south,
The gate
the south
entrance.
property.
It's an indentation and we just cut that, what a gate would have, where a gate should have been.
Right.
Mhm.
Yes, I believe if there is a small opening by where the steps.
There's no opening. in the front.
Okay. So it was just.
Yeah, we're trying to stay away from the neighbors trying to go
You
use their
can't
stuff.
get in.
You can't get in.
And we don't want.
So if I do, if you will let my staff approve it, I will need an application. I just want to make sure it's okay with everybody, or if we want to hold off on it.
Oh, yeah, I think it's okay. She's talking.
Obviously, they need access, so that's a little bit different. It's kind of thinking out aesthetics of how that's done and how that's being put back. That's concerning. So it seems like a good drawing. I'm trying to understand to set some framework. Would probably be something that staff could review if they have any concerns. So it would probably be
That demo's typically not something that I review, but since we are here discussing it, and it's part of the larger project, which I will probably add notes if I do approve it as a staff.
I'm okay with it. Yeah. Given the circumstances, I think we're okay. Just in order to provide access to the site itself.
Okay, and I will note if we do want to do a special meeting, we need at least 3 commissioners to like agree to a motion. So it's either, if I'm remembering the bylaws, it's the bylaws correctly, it's either 3 commissioners or chair needs to call it, and we are going to have a chair.
That's correct.
So I would think if we wanted to do it, we would do it as a motion and all agree that way, if that's the direction you all want to go.
Would you guys entertain that? Are you open for that?
Yeah.
You always make progress, especially. We're not supposed to do them, but I think we should.
I think this is a case we have gone on for
I agree.
existing power. I think we're warranted.
I'm up.
Well, this is 11:35, Yale to a special meeting of the Victorian Village.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
And since this is a lot of the fun, I'm going to see what works because we do have to have it in person because it is technically. So I'll probably try to see if we have this room, and then I have to coordinate with which commissioners are available. I'm going to try to work as quickly as I can, so I'll also be working with students. It might take me a couple days, but if you don't hear from me, I would say Tuesday of next week, please, somebody drop me a line.
That sounds cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
So much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I know we are running a little behind.
Thank you.
All right, so we are going to move on to number 5, and I am going to thank all of the applicants who have been waiting for their patience. But we,
Great. See what you've done.
Oh, I have nothing to do. I have nothing to do with this people out there.
Thank you guys for.
I tried to make it all myself.
No,
And everybody.
So, Mr. Siegel, thank you, obviously, thank you so much, Bob.
yes, I think that was a great discussion, great clarifying questions all around. So we'll move on to 251.
But Jeff has to leave here. Will we just run through election first?
So we have people waiting,
Sure.
and since we've got the public that come in specific times in the morning,
Sure.
I mean, as much as I.
Maybe kick 2 out. Go.
Alrighty, so. 251 West Prairie Avenue. This is to install a 36 tall iron gate railing around the perimeter of the porch to replace existing. Commissioners at the business meeting wanted to know if the roof deck was accessible or if it was intended to be used in the future. The applicant did confirm it's currently accessible. Dimensions on the existing railing were requested. Commissioners wanted to know where the existing railing was mounted to the roof deck, and the applicant verified that the existing railing is mounted to the front of the house, and the second floor additional photographs were also supplied for that. The applicant, staff does recommend approval of the application and verifications or modifications made by the commission. Basis for recommendation is 3116.11 standards for alteration. And it does not look like we have our applicant here. If the additional materials are acceptable to the commission, there's no discussion, we can move forward. Or we can bump this.
Was everyone okay with the design of this?
Because it's vastly different than what they have, but they also.
You know, it looks very commercial to me.
So if we want, since it does not look like the applicant is here, we can continue this. Just for the sake of time and I don't, if they're not here by now, I don't think they're gonna show up.
That seems appropriate to go ahead and continue.
I have a motion to continue.
So, favor say aye.
Aye.
I oppose. Should we continue? Okay.
All right, so number 6 is 1237 Yale Avenue. This is to install the 12-foot wide privacy gate across the driveway. This would include 2 post holes dug for the 6-foot high gate. Commissioners at the business meeting requested an update to the elevation drawing to get a better sense of the gate. They would like to see this as a scale measure drawing. Commissioners also requested to know how the intended dimension of the wood was. Staff again recommends approval with any clarifications and modifications made by the commissioners. And this is City Code 3116.11 standards for alteration and 3116.13 stages for site. Come on up. We'll get you sworn in.
Which one is your name, sir?
Darren Barrett,
Do you agree to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, sir. Anything to add to the application?
No, that's it.
Especially when this systems.
In the business meeting, did you discuss material? Why is it wood versus?
No, that is not.
Because I would see this not as a wood fence, I would see it as a aluminum fence.
I think if it's gonna be wood, it's way too close to the front of the street, and it can be solid, so.
Yep.
Maybe it was wrong in the application. So I don't know if that, they would be posted. Moving it further back or the location we're driving to.
I do know the client, the only reason they really want it as far forward is because they have a side door. And their idea was trying to prevent, so that they can still access through that door and their kids and dogs and animals with still being secure. They're quite keen on having a gate and they would prefer a privacy gate, but if need be, it can be a like a raw time style gate as well.
I just see that the detail of the house. I don't see just a wood, even a fancy wood, a fancy wood gate,
Oh, yeah.
take away from facade.
I know, I mean, I don't have pictures, but one of the neighbors further across has a wooden gate and the neighbor on the opposite side has a steel gate. So I guess it's just weighing it, but I would say they are further back.
There are examples of wood, but usually, my mind here, but one is not only the location relative to the front of the house, but also the thing, as a side of them, a 12-foot thing. Right, it's in that close, it's not really.
Yeah, so it'll be 6 foot leaves. It's just because the driveway is 12 foot, so that was the sort of minimum we could go to be able to get your posts on either end. And then you'll have a 6 foot leaf out, so it'll be a double gate.
So, yeah, I guess to clarify what's in this.
Yeah.
Total.
For the total, yeah.
Total between house and house.
Yeah.
And I agree with the commissioners here. At the business meeting, my recollection is that they've now added page 7, 8, and 9 where it's wood, and so that wasn't clarified, I didn't think, in the business meeting, but. So it's 7 through 10 here to be new. I agree that if it's at the current location, it should be wrought iron unless you push it back. Even with the property to the south, I believe it's the south, then I think you could.
So are they open to that?
I think they're open to the suggestions of whether they have it either the raw tie-in style at the front or a privacy at the back, and whether they can, I don't know how it works, whether we have to come back here again, revise it. But unfortunately, they're not here, so I can't sort of talk on their behalf, but yeah, their main, I mean, I know they want it as far forward purely because of the side door. If the side door wasn't there, they probably wouldn't be that bothered about having it as far forward as they want it. So perhaps for the security, they can drive their car and park it up. The gate is closed, the kids are out, it's fine. So they may prefer that to the privacy gate further back.
Right.
Yeah.
So could we pass propose a motion for one of those two options and subject to staff approval, depending on which one, to avoid them coming back?
I'd be okay with that.
No problem, not a concern at all. We can also do subcommittee if there's an aesthetic issue or something of that nature, but typically, so that's another option that would still, help the process in terms of time, if anybody was curious or wanted to see.
I just worry that the aesthetic of the wood is not refined enough.
Why don't we have them come back and at a business meeting, we could take a look at the aesthetic, if you could return to your client and propose the two options, the option they want to go with, we could do it, and that's something to staff approval.
Or we could have a special, and we could have. No, we could have 3 commissioners, look at their 2 designs and say, there you go.
I mean, we could draft it in.
That we do that all the time.
If the product.
Subcommittee, I thought you meant another special meeting.
No, it's not a committee.
And I think that was exactly.
And that's quicker than the business meeting. It's very straightforward. I think.
Yeah, I mean, I would propose if you want just it'll be a straightforward raw time gate, roughly 6 foot tall, 12 foot wide. Is that, so you guys just want like a different style if you bring it forward?
No, I would like to see what you're thinking about if you bring it forward, but more importantly, if you're gonna do it, a wood one back, I would like to see the details of that.
I got it.
And that just gives you some time. That's what I think what we're proposing is that you would have the time to go back to the client, talk to the client, and then propose something, get back in touch with Kim.
Yeah.
And what Kim would do is you would set up a subcommittee, and that subcommittee would be able to kind of communicate via email to alleviate having to wait a month for a hearing.
Okay.
To try to
And just say yay or nay.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Yep,
is that someone the right way to do it?
Yes.
I think it does.
Motion, I understand, motion, guys.
A motion to move this to the special. style of fence. Style of fence can be with wire.
Second.
All right, who's the subcommittee? So Commissioner Sisson, Skinner, and Myers.
Just to make a, this,
We agree. Yeah, I can see the movie. I don't know. I mean, see was bad enough, but. All right.
And you'll let me know after.
I was not here 20 years ago.
Ready, go. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
The here's no respect, Steve. Christmas.
All right, so.
You're trying to make it clear, aren't you?
Ran Jack off already.
There you go.
No offense, Jack, if you're watching, but.
Okay, this is number 7, 975 Highland Street.
Yep.
All righty, I'm gonna read through my staff report. Please get seated. So this is to remove the existing slate roof gutters and to install asphalt shingles. The owners are Supreme and State Way. They are on the roof. The roof would have ridge caps, which would be painted to red. This would include replacing trim under the roof edge to match existing. The replacement would be in the southeast corner and on the north elevation, the corner chimney.
That's right.
To install 5-inch case style aluminum gutters. The gutters would be painted with celestial blue and replace the skylight on the black back roof, as well as remove and replace the front porch fascia, like to be up into that red basket. Commissioners at the business meeting requested additional photographs of the condition of the gutters. A roof plan was also requested. Commissioners wanted to see where the existing slate and the asphalt shingles were. They also wanted to know where the cap-round gutters and K-style gutters were located. Commissioners noted they would like to retain the cap-round gutters. Replacement like the light would be city code 3116.11 standards for alteration. HBO staff would like to note that the copper gutters may be replaced with aluminum in the same style. Staff recommends continuation of the application to allow the applicant time to submit the slate assessment and provide additional photographs of the slate shingles. Staff supports the approval of the gutter replacement with the condition that they are replaced with light. So the even down gutters would be appropriate and would be appropriate for the K-style gutters where they are. Basis for recommendation is City Code 3116.11, standards for alteration.
Just want to get your name, sir.
My name's Justin Tice. I work for Klaus Roofing and we're the contractor of choice. Here to represent the homeowner because he's out of town.
You can tell the truth and nothing but the truth.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Anything to add to staff's presentation?
So other than the fact that I'm kind of here on a last minute basis, Jared had to leave town and couldn't come. So this is the first time that I'm really going through one of these meetings and seeing how this process works. So anything you guys need from me, I'm more than happy to put that together. I'm definitely hearing that we're going to need to go back with 6-inch half round gutters instead of K-styles up top. But I just want to clarify that I hear that where K-styles exist now, we can replace those with K-style.
As long as they're original to the home, which I think there might be an addition on here, so they might have been installed as K-style. And
yeah.
I did want to, the homeowner did email me that they were not yet able to get the slate roof assessment.
Right.
I reached out to Durable Slate, but I did tell him, I would tell all of you that.
And do we have a roof plan? I see the Skylight engine location of the Skylights. I mean, I don't see any of that stuff, so I'm kind of confused here.
Yep, so the Skylight is on the south face of the westernmost roof section. It's an asphalt roof section currently. And that Skylight is the only Skylight and it will need to be replaced during the project like for like.
I mean, it would really be nice to see the roof plan and see, this is slate, this is asphalt, this is this type of asphalt, this might be another asphalt. so we can see it holistically and make decisions about it. That
Sure.
would be helpful.
So,
We'll see where that skylight.
right. So what I can do, I have an Eagle View measurement report. If you guys are familiar with that, it's a GPS measurement report with photographs to measure the roof. I'm more than happy while I'm here or at a later time to provide you guys with that information, and I can mark up a photo to show you there's slate on the front slopes, asphalt everywhere else, including over the front porch that I anticipate was an addition. And that's why it has case tiles, because those case tiles are very old. They're steel. So that gives me an indication that they've been there for some time.
That'd do the trick.
Okay.
So with that being the case, it doesn't seem like really on anything. With the addition of these two new elements, so with the assessment report of being able to understand the conditions of the roof, and then the materiality and the clarification of the other ancillary elements that will be placed in kind or in theory in kind based upon location that will be clarified in that site plan or area.
Okay.
Yes.
So do you need anything else from us to clarify or, since our hope is to go ahead and continue the application to allow the applicant enough time to bring that information back
Mm-hmm.
and to be reviewed in a future hearing.
Okay.
But is there anything else?
So just want to clarify, so the site and roof plan, no problem on that. The slate assessment, you're right, Durable hasn't been able to get out there, neither is any other slate specialist to do that assessment. So those are two things we need to provide. Other than that, are there any other product or work scope details that you guys would need to see?
So, since you're with the roofing company, you can get up on the roof and take some additional photographs. That would also be
Sure.
helpful.
I have tons of those that I can provide.
You can provide that as opposed to climbing up there again. That would be appreciated.
Drone shots, so much safer. The only other question that I had, there's some sections of soffit that need to be replaced. Currently, what's there is beadboard. Customer wanted to go with vinyl just because it's a much less maintenance product. I told him that's probably not going to fly. I just want to clarify that. That's no problem.
For the stages for alteration, it would need to be like.
Yeah, that's what I anticipated as well, but he's saying, hey, just throw that out there just in case that's something we can do. And I told him, hey, sometimes pigs fly, I guess, but probably not today. So I'll take that information back to Jared. And it sounds like, we'll have, until next month's hearing to get all this stuff in line and get this to you guys, and then it'll be readdressed next month, or is there an opportunity to get a staff approval before then?
Today.
Okay.
That's just so we can get you on the agenda. I can review materials, get it to the commissioners. We've got the business meeting, which is an informal meeting. And then we've got the hearing. So I will be in contact with a summary of what we've talked about, the items I need, as well as when your deadline is.
And then poor performance. I did not grab a card before I left my car. Could I give you a Post-it note with my contact information and have you tie me in there?
Victorian Village Commission, the UC@columbus.gov. Feel free to shoot that email and let me know your contact information. I believe I've got the homeowner's information, but I can copy you too.
Okay. Thank you, Kimberly.
I'm going to hand this back to our chair at the moment. I don't believe we have a motion.
No, that's correct. I just want to make sure that we had clarified the items that were needed. So, all right, so can we have a motion to continue?
Motion to continue.
Second. Any discussion? All of those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone.
You'll be good.
All right, Jeffrey, you've got 3 minutes until 6. Do you want to press on or do you want to?
I do need to meet. So are we gonna do elections or what do you wanna do? Do we have?
Go, you can ask.
What application are you waiting for?
The conceptual.
So in theory, she may be from, is that
No, I'm supposed to be here.
5:30?
We are running
We're running.
quite.
Is there an opportunity, just given, we've had some staff and of course some commission members kind of fall off. So is there a possibility of us being able to take maybe 2 or 3 minutes, just to, yes, ma'am.
It should always be super nice.
Always. Is that, would you bear with us for a second? Thank you so much. All right. Okay. So, dialogue wise, as far as nomination, thoughts about, I can't share, unfortunately. So I think as we kind of talked about that, I was trying to figure out, obviously we need a chair, we also need, statement treasurer.
We do not need a treasurer. I clarified that with Jamie, and that is per your guys' bylaws. There's nothing explicitly stated that you need a treasurer.
So chair and treasurer.
Chair and
Vice
vice chair.
So currently I'm vice chair. And that's kind of what was, and I think Jack at that time was taking the role, or I was taking the role of vice chair. If I remember correctly, I don't know if it was formalized. But then Jack was taking on the role for chair, when Mark asked. So we've been kind of acting in this kind of interim state.
So are you okay with vice chair?
I'm okay with vice chair, and I don't mind that. I'm okay with that. The issue is that I have some personal commitments and things that may force me to leave early or something of that nature. So I just want to make sure that I don't necessarily negatively impact us being able to move things forward. That's all. Great. That's the only issue.
We have anyone that's stepping up to the plate? Chair?
I nominate Kevin.
Yeah, I think you would be good. And we'll support you, it's just a matter of,
There are some times like, doing discussion, I have minutes meeting as well. And job minutes, but it's kind of-
So I'd like to know, I don't expect the chair to be at every meeting, just as Sean has said, he cannot be at every meeting as vice chair. So part of the reason we have a vice chair is that they can fill in if you're not here. And if you're ever both not here, those two you get big straws.
I think Skinner wants to say something.
I'm just waiting my time to say that I would be happy to do it in the future, but feel like I might need a few meetings on that.
So we have that to play with, that's good, that's good, yeah.
That's very helpful.
Right.
From that standpoint.
And that makes all the sense in the world, so I think that's good.
And I mean, just case in point, today's dialogue in terms of, 11:35, I think was just a great point of, us being able to collaborate, support one another to get into. So I think that speaks volumes. So if we can kind of continue that, we can find as a commission list.
Right. That's cool.
Okay, so let's vote.
So with that, so a nomination for chair, we'll start with chair is, so can we have a motion to vote Mr. Sullivan in the chair position?
So motion for
Is there a second?
Sullivan to be our chair.
Awesome. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, sir. Motion. All right, so a motion for vice chair. So a motion for vice chair position, nomination. Second, any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No, it's just- No, I'm.
So I've got 4 for one
Yeah,
abstaining.
and then we have one on the record that Skinner has put his hand up to say that he's gonna be the,
And Skinner here will be the alternate.
yes.
And so we are still missing roughly, what, 1 or 2 seats? 2 seats?
Two.
2 seats, 2 seats, okay, so, okay. And
I do not have an update on where that is at the moment. I realized this morning that I need to ask,
okay,
but we had some issues with the email server working. I will
Okay.
try to remember.
I gotta get out of here, kid.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Thank you. Thank you. Congratulations. All right.
So since there is only one applicant, yes, I was gonna actually.
Yes.
Yeah, you're here, you've been waiting, we very much appreciate you waiting throughout.
So how many more do we have?
We have three including hers.
Three.
And then this one is conceptual.
Yeah.
If the other folks aren't here, one of them, I mean, wasn't going to be here, I would like to,
One of them requested. continue.
yeah, the signage, which I would like to give them some feedback, so if they need to change anything, they
Okay.
can. Just, it's currently advertisement, so I didn't want to. I wanted, if we had any feedback for them to give it to them and they can change things if needed. But we're going to number 10, which is 910 Denison Avenue. This, the applicant has submitted 3 versions of the proposed addition. This is to construct a new second and third story addition to an existing 1-story dental office to make the structure 2.5 stories. And I'm sorry that I still haven't fixed that typo. And emulate the scale of a single family home. The first floor existing brick would remain. The property would need rezone from the ARID to RO. I've included the minutes from the last meeting in the staff report. Commissioners at the business meeting requested additional current photographs showing context, adjacent structures, and the current building. Commissioners also requested that dimensions be included on the plans. They wanted to know at least the general overall thing. And commissioners also noticed that a site plan was needed, which I will have to say to the applicant's credit, I think she did submit the height originally, and I used the right document. Basis for recommendation is City Code 3116.11 standards for alteration. And since this is conceptual, recommendation is to offer feedback that our applicant can use at a future hearing.
Oh, I was wondering, could you say your name?
Heidi Bolliard, Simplified Living Architecture.
Please tell the truth, nothing but the truth.
Yes. So yeah, we put together, based on last month's meeting, we put together 3 different ideas for just kind of conceptual design for the project. And then also submitted the pictures that also have just kind of heights of neighboring properties. I know that when we were here last month, it was mentioned that it should, I think, be a 2-story structure, whereas we're kind of taking advantage of attic space like many of the neighboring homes do for a 3rd story. So yeah, just to give some information on the height of the neighboring structures. I know that the one structure that's right, kind of, I guess it's behind the structure. Well, it's kind of, yeah, it's the one off Denison. It is a 2-story structure. However, it's a 2-story structure, like the back of the dental office is up on a hill. So it's a 2-story structure, but it's still up further. So even though this is 2.5 stories, we're getting close to 3 stories in the one version. We're still similar height to that original 2-story structure.
Do you kind of want to, maybe since you have a few options, but if you could kind of maybe walk us through kind of, each option, or just to be able to maybe provide some kind of maybe introductory kind of groundwork for each one?
Yeah, we were trying to maintain as much of the existing brick structure as possible, while also maintaining some of the windows. The dental office that is on the 1st floor right now, she's planning to maintain that office while construction's going on. So, and yeah, she's not looking to really move windows and things because it is already an existing space. So to be adding a bunch of windows or moving windows within the existing structure is going to be challenging because of the walls that are already there. So just trying to work with what's there and just improve upon it. So that's why we had placed on the front elevation for A where it is located to take advantage of the windows below, but then also just kind of being able to create some symmetry with adding windows to that second floor and the third floor. And then the same with that left elevation too, just going off where that original side door is and window with copying a couple windows above. And then because we can't use any of, well, because she's maintaining the dental office below that additional structure that's coming out to the, I guess it'd be the west, that income, or that allows for an entry for her dental office. Last year, I think it must have been 2 years ago, we had actually gone through approval to have a new structure added to the side of this building, just so she'd have a vestibule as people were coming in, because she just had a lot of temperature issues within her office because it would straight into her waiting room. So we had already planned to do an addition on the side of this just for her dental office. So it encompasses, was it?
Yes.
Yeah, it was approved.
Yes, I was trying to remember to add it in as the addition.
Sorry, that was the first time.
And if you want, I can have Kara send that over to you tomorrow, so you have it, if it's not.
I think I got it in files. I
Okay.
think it went through when Sarah was here.
Yeah, I think it was 2 years ago at this point, because I know it wasn't last year. So,
And it was all in the order.
yeah, it's a blur. But yeah, so it encompassed an entry for her. So this addition on that west side is that entry for her office, but then also the stair to go up to the 2 apartment units. And then the one thing that was mentioned when we were here last time was just kind of materials by kind of simplifying it some. So that's why we had just gone with the horizontal siding rather than using additional materials. Because before we had looked at potentially doing like a horizontal siding and also a board and batten type material. And then the plan with B was just really to, kind of similar with the structure with doing that addition to the west side. But then also, I know that both of these, A and B, that structure at the front of it, cantilevers, just to, so it's just not a big box, like it's a box now. So just to move a little bit away from that, to just cantilever it to give that front facade some variation.
So that's just kind of clarifying that percent. So that's an option A and B, the front elevation, that projected second story piece is kind of projected out from the mass of the existing building.
And then also with the roof, like, because it slopes in 2 different, it's basically a transverse gable going in both directions, it kind of makes it feel a lot smaller than doing one big roof upon the whole structure.
That should be maintaining existing window profile. A is existing 4 points.
Yeah, there's 4, and then we were looking at adding like a faux panel below some of them. Or we could do like a faux shutter as well there, just to yeah. Just because in her office, she's not necessarily looking to add additional windows.
So on the top left elevation, you're saying that the volume windows are the existing in the line, so the proposed panel.
Yeah, right now they're a fixed window, but we were gonna do a window that adds the mullions to it just to look more residential and less commercial. And then the two without mullions would be either a faux panel or faux shutter. Just to continue that symmetry with what's happening above.
So I'm kind of curious though.
It was to create more symmetry. When we came last month, it was mentioned that it needed, it'd be helpful or it'd be better if the windows were more symmetrical with the existing. So, it was just adding windows. So the ones that are there or the ones that are shown on the first level now are existing. So it's just, and so it was, adding the windows above to match.
So that's purely an elevation study, not necessarily driven.
No, I don't even know what the floor plan looks like at this point. And then option C was just to throw out a completely different idea with doing a flat roof structure. And then just break it up into some different chunks. And then we still have that one section of the structure cantilevering out.
Do you want to look at, Tim, do you want to take a look, just because you're not here last month, you want to take a look just quickly and just allow us to kind of paint through the previous, just to kind of get a sense of context for the discussion possibly.
Yeah, I'm right.
Okay. Just kind of thinking about maybe some of the thoughts from last time was just trying to be responsive. Trying to be responsive to the holistic, kind of the end result. Understanding the existing conditions and the existing conditions impact to the new addition. At the end of the conversation, there was kind of a verification about the existing doctor's office of the document. So start to kind of shape what impact could have. I think there was some recommendations about change the context in terms of that new condition. I think we thought about it, said maybe have some simple, more simple diagrams and dialogue regarding massing condition prior to the applicant pushing forward with a lot more materials to that nature. So that's probably the reason why the plan information is not part of the discussion, because we kind of said, hey, it doesn't have to be final, but it's really a kind of a massive conversation first. Yes, that's right. All right, so open up the conversation just for some comments. In no particular order in terms of A, B, or C. It's just just being able to, but it may be helpful just for the applicant's sake, just reference A and A. I feel this, or so.
Well, and we would love to get to a conceptual design to move forward with this evening. We came last month with the understanding that we would be able to move into actual approval from there. So we had actually submitted all the documents and things like that with materials and things just to move forward, because that's what we were thinking that we had needed. So.
Understand. So conceptual, no reviews, but I think that, the applicant is asking for some good direction out of the conversation today to be able to advance, the design and continue to move forward, conceptual to an approvable, process.
This will be, my understanding, it could be taken as a commercial
They'll have two apartments above it. So Dr. Yanklevich would like to have her kids they're gonna be empty nesters soon, so they're looking to move downtown. So. And then rent the other unit.
I could start a meeting. Appreciate, obviously, I mean, taking a step back and kind of bringing these, these concepts forward. And this is unfortunate. We understand how we got here. Appreciate, obviously, being responsive. Quick turnaround. So in terms of the amount of information, so very appreciative. To me, what's interesting is I think how Tim picked up on is, the amount of windows we're trying to understand. To one degree, we understand the goal in terms of, not occupy or continuing to occupy that. But how do you balance the end result with that constraint? And with that, it seems like there could still be some opportunities to occupy, but still be able to, let's just say, manipulate an opening or something of that nature in the sequencing of those events. Minor alteration to, that element, that portion of it. So I understand that there's a concern, but it seems in order to balance out the fenestrations with the max, that some level of impact is probably going to be, it seems like it's going to be necessary. And that's just a challenge. It's just an observation. Right now, the amount of penetration on that elevation and such is pretty significant. I think thinking about, the amount of roof was kind of a topic of discussion last time. So the transverse gable definitely helped out. The only thing, and this is again, not the architecture, it's the constraint of the existing. So I think one of the challenges is being able to get the proportions back in alignment with the overall length and width that you're dealing with. So if I go to span a 612 or an 812 or 912, 1212, and I span that from point A to point B, all of a sudden that's the result, right? Because you're not starting with the width, you're starting with a given width. You're not starting with your entire width from a proportion standpoint. So the amount or it starts to look a lot of really suburban, just given the proportions that it's yielding. So with that, to me, it's either breaking this up, that it looks like 2 pieces, 3 pieces, however, in terms of not one piece that has elements that start to project and move, to probably try to see if you can get that completely back online. And I don't know what that looks like, it's just a thought. Or being able to gravitate towards, I think some of the commission members mentioned the kind of flat roof solution, just to try to help navigate the So that's just kind of high level thoughts and reactions to just penetration of the mass, not necessarily the design. Yes, it's not that. Just trying to make sure that you have some understanding about bioreactions to the massing. And it's not the architecture again, it's more so how you address balancing the result with the constraint of the physics. Just some addition. So if I look at the flat roof kind of condition on item C, for instance, is there a way to not address, do you have to have those roof forms pitched? Could it be a flat parapet condition that may allow you, to not telegraph or not deal with, point A to point B pitch. And then you kind of pitch the roof behind the flat area. So does that help you start to kind of balance some of those, masses and shapes? Just an observation as it relates to item C specifically.
Yeah, we were just worried with that it's gonna make it even taller. Like, once we add a parapet on it, that goes to hide the existing flat, or the flat roof that would be up there.
Would you be, just curiosity, would you be able to, whatever your, like, for instance, if I'm looking at the front elevation, and that's, C, that would be your, so to speak, height. And then as you turn the corner on your left elevation, that roof plane would stay, or I should say the parapet line would stay the same. And then the roof would just kind of fall in the background. But I agree in terms of, you don't want to necessarily raise it, now say 2-3 feet more, just to allow.
Yeah, because that puts us at pretty much 35 feet. So that's so much more significant than having a pitched roof that's 35 feet tall. Just because at least then the roof's sloping away from you and like on each side of the elevation. Otherwise, it's a big 35-foot, like, kind of square structure.
Any other comments? Sure. At least, help that.
I think the century sort of demonstration is starting to come along. And it's for like number A, letter A, or stat side. Maybe look at Tim's and extra window or two in there. I think looking at the breaking up of the roof alignment there. I think looks a lot better in this iteration. The pitch roof of B really really work for the multiple mass unit transverse cabling for the right elevation. We will have some issues with that. Approximately the property next door to her, but don't want it to get lost. Through of these, that's probably just.
B is the weakest.
No, the right elevation.
Oh,
And I know you don't have programming, and so you can't really kind of stay out of demonstrations. So that we're into that, and just don't want it to get lost in the shuffles. Over this. So the overall height and pitching for.
oh, I'm sorry. So you were saying the right elevation?
Yeah, it's listed as.
Yeah, that one's right against it's right up against the property line.
Yeah, you've got that house.
So it's right there. So we just didn't put any fenestrations there just because it's right there.
Right.
Like, well, and you're not gonna see anything other than another wall of another structure. So.
And I understand, and I agree with that. I just, as it comes along, I don't want to see it kind of get lost. Shuffle, just become a large blank wall. So, just one talking about seeing the, yeah, so I think the roof line in option A, feel more appropriate for comparison to what we have. I think there is a flat roof option possibly to be explored. I would want to give you some direction here today. But the shed roof really doesn't work for me. So. And I think kind of to Sean's point, even though the existing building is there, if there needs to be some alterations to the existing brick building for fenestration, that can, I think that would be appropriate for how it responds to the overall design. In context with the issue going on.
In terms of the penetration, so you're thinking like shifting them or changing the size of them?
Of the existing, or, because you're matching the existing size that's there.
No, actually, we're making the second floor windows larger. Yeah, just because we wanted to make them closer to what was in, in the surrounding area. So the ones on the first floor are 5 feet, so we made the ones on the second floor 5'6", just to give them a little bit more height to them, but still keeping with an egress window.
The 6 inches on the I was thinking maybe the same size.
I think it's more so, just for me, is more, I completely understand. I think it's just balancing out proportions in terms of what the right size of the windows are. But as far as, so for instance, I think last time we said that, is there a way to potentially gang a few windows or close a window and then create another window that may respond to the addition or something of that nature to kind of, or do they all have to be the same? Like, are they all individual windows? So you start to kind of allow some movements, that respond, or those movements have a certain proportion or certain responsiveness to the mass they sit within. So I think that was maybe what was potentially being referenced.
Yeah, I mean, if we look at like the third floor on the First Avenue, I can see the cable having, double bank. I mean, that's a very typical detail, and I can start to match below, help to find some of that space.
And I don't think the administrations have to be very, from top to bottom, in line. So there are some games, and so to speak, that can be played in that kind of grooming. Every once in a while, they may align, a bump in the road, so to speak, based upon the mass, and then starts to flow something apart. So just kind of finding that kind of comfortable, position for the windows. So you don't necessarily have to be as rigorous, for instance,
Okay,
and create more constraints.
right.
Just as well.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Stands out to me. I think the massing portion. Starts with especially in the section, it starts to feel a little better to me. I also wonder about on the Dennis Avenue. Any thoughts on expression? That's the entry. It's right then. Looking at what looks like a main facade on the first. Going to the side. I'm curious.
Well, the door on the side there, it connects. Well, part of it is we need a handicap ramp to get to the dental office. So that's why it's tucked on the side where it is. We couldn't do it on the First Avenue elevation without losing parking space, which is not a possibility. So yeah, we could look at adding a little roof on that, above that door there, and then the door to actually access the apartments is actually off Kleiner Avenue.
I think just functionally, it's something you're going to consider.
Mm-hmm.
I'm intrigued by. CD. It's in village. Take it for what purpose? Simple structure.
I agree with those comments. I think, a small covering of those entry level doors, pull out that, the stories that exist. And then, yeah, the removal of some of those windows on the second floor. It does look like there's a lot of them there. Especially if they're gonna be larger than this thing. But, I mean, I've been going to this dentist office for years now, but I am really intrigued by this idea, this design. I think it would really neat, especially given the historical nature of this property. It does stand out currently in the neighborhood.
Mhm.
So I think going in this direction would be really neat for some of the last real estate that's.
Like C,
What's that?
like the flat roof option? Is that what you're saying?
But actually, I think it's option A for,
I personally feel like option A fits in the neighborhood better than C.
right. The
I
only,
think it's too modern for
I
that
totally
very
agree with that.
residential neighborhood.
Across the street there are the row apartments, but just given the scale of what we have here, I think option A would fit the mold better of the houses that then go down Denison as well as First on that corner.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think a few of the touches that you mentioned as far as maybe a small porch coverings on those doors, and maybe the removal of some of the windows on that second floor if possible would be better.
On that addition that's going to the side, towards Denison, or on the west side, yeah, it's to the addition on the west side. Do you like the little roof structure that's on plan or on the option B rather than doing the gable roof like we have on option A?
Are you thinking standing seam and then reading gas? Sort of rocking? Perfect. Low slope roof.
Like a flat roof?
I mean, this looks to me like it's like a, what, 312 low slope.
Yeah.
I think it's just, again, I think it's the width, like the width that you're constraining. It seems like, maybe an option A, what it does is it starts to kind of pull that width back in and kind of proportion of that mass. But it seems like maybe, so if I was looking at this without fenestration, it seems like maybe option A in terms of that. It starts to kind of, pull that mass back into proportion.
Mhm.
I look at B, when I start to chop it.
Oh, yeah.
It starts to.
Oh, I just mean for that small little section,
Okay.
that small little addition that we have the metal roof on. That, I just meant that portion, not the main structure. Yeah.
Okay. So,
No worries.
so, I mean, maybe if you were to kind of take, like if you're looking at option A and then you say, okay, well, how do I, because right now it's like almost like that front piece is kind of that's your main entry point. So how do you kind of call out entry or how do you signify it has a certain sense of prominence? So it seems like it wants to be, a little bit more windows, a little bit, so just kind of balancing out the hard surface with the administration. That's just gonna, and I think with that, along with, some of the thoughts that the commissioners are seeing in terms of, is there something that allows you to kind of
Some type of
take that
canopy.
scale, that scale back down, and maybe that would probably be very.
Yeah, I still gravitate toward that in terms of just overall composition. Massing the elevation, the elevation itself, demonstration, treatment of arrival of entry, but it's pretty exciting.
Okay.
You have, there's a little bit of impact currently to the parapet, like the existing parapet, like in terms of transition between brick and, second floor. So it looks like there's going to be there's going to be some modification to the existing veneer in order to allow these two kind of nestle together.
Correct.
Does that pose any challenges, or let's just say, for instance, you take more of, you take more away, you kind of modify it to kind of give you the right belt location or something like that. So you start to challenge where that existing parapet, and it's more veneer, it's not like the interior structure. So can you challenge, where do you stop for it? Or where's the appropriate place to stop for it? Just because I think that line starts to help you kind of like deal with the, because you get more verticality.
Yeah.
So just kind of thinking about that with understanding the constraint of existing, so just an observation.
To totally conflict everything that I've already said. There is something about the piece that sticks out to the left, actually celebrating and as a, what feels like an addition. There's something about that scale that I appreciate. But look at it. That's inside of it.
So like, just kind of thinking too, is there, like, if you want it to be residential, right? So is there a kind of every once in a while, somebody mentioned it a little bit more particular. So is there a kind of a commercial twist to this in terms of how you address fenestrations to deal with the proportions? So there may be, there's a language, there's a residential language, but then all of a sudden there's this kind of commercial attitude to the entry, and then you pick it up again in another little small item, or, what I mean? So that I don't think it necessarily has to be all residential, it doesn't necessarily have to be all commercial. So is there a way to kind of balance the two? And that kind of starts to speak to the programming, possibly.
But I think that's what strikes me with, what tricks me with option C is the fact that you are kind of celebrating the fact that unfortunately it's commercial use and residential. But I think that's okay to create that separation and distinction as long as they're all still those. So I think that is what's the that kind of clear delineation on C kind of strikes me.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm staring back and forth at every detail of these. I think it's a C seems too modern for that corner. And even B seems to have like a suburban feel to it. Especially like the First Avenue location. Or maybe it's just that.
I think everything would come sound.
Oh, no, I like A with like what you suggested, removing some windows and adding small hoods above those two doors. And technically, I guess the third door would want to finer as well.
Well, that's the one thing with like what you were saying, like the twist on the commercial compared with like residential is just with all the fenestrations on A is just if you look at a lot of the apartment structures and things down in that area that are newer, it has a lot of windows through there. Especially because this is such a big, like the original box is so big, like there's so much space in the middle that we can't get windows in for like for a living. For living, that it's like we have a lot of fenestration on the exterior, especially like on that east wall, the right elevation. Just with doing windows there, it's a challenge just because there's a structure right next to it. So it's not like it's going to get a lot of natural light in there. Anyway, so really just taking advantage of, those other three sides where we can get natural light into those two apartments.
And I guess I just think that just from a standpoint of being able to, I want to go back to that comment about, is there a way to not be as rigorous in terms of alignment? There's kind of a harmony of the existing and the harmony, with the new. But sort of speak a little bit more casual approach instead of this really formal, rigorous alignment of everything. That, there's a looping in times, looking at each mass, and then there's a moment where you do a lot. And then there's a purposeful architectural kind of bump that allows you to kind of maybe a little bit more freedom to
Yeah.
react.
I feel like last month you told us that it needed to be more symmetrical.
And I think that not to be as, I guess, hopefully today, just to be personal, in terms of the thoughts, is I think that we were thinking about not necessarily symmetrical vertically.
Okay.
That.
But just within those.
Symmetrical in terms of, I shouldn't say symmetrical, but responsiveness
Okay.
to the existing. So then that way the result, so to speak, looks like a whole. Right? So just use that in terms of, if I misled you or misspoke last time. But again, I think that, you definitely heard our comments and our thoughts, and it seems as though, a lot of these studies have great merit to be able to open dialogue.
I apologize that I have only one more minute. Do we still have a quorum without?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other thoughts, Mr. Sealer?
No, I looking at the detail of this, I think I voiced it that.
Does that offer, enough dialogue or feedback or to try to help move forward with an option?
Yeah. I guess my only other, question was just with the existing fenestrations and, thinking of moving them and things. I know, they're not going to want to have to change the size or the shape of all of those windows. So just making sure that we're okay with, kind of keeping the proportion of the majority, at least, of those existing windows and the possibility of them just like, one or two of them shifting within the original wall. Or that
I don't want to speak for other commissioners. For me, it was, I don't want to say that that's the solution. I guess what I was saying is that I just wanted to call attention that the constraint of not modifying the existing may not necessarily result to that balance that you need.
Mhm.
If you continue to advance option A. So, or any other option that we would consider. So in that process of that, if you feel as though this window can stay at that size, then it, you create that balance, great. Or if it needs to gain, it's really a result of being able to advance the design. So I don't want to say that I want to put those constraints on. You have enough constraints.
Right.
Yeah.
But
I think it's.
And you mean that in the sense of probably not modifying the existing structure below probably reduces the size of the windows above. Not to go down too far, but let me know if I'm saying too much.
No, I just, again, I wanna make sure there's enough design freedom to be able to balance out the results of the mass. Planning, things of that nature, that you're gonna be addressing in that next round. So if you feel as though a modification is gonna help the end result in terms of proportion, then that may be warranted. If there's a way to not address it, or find yourself in alignment with the constraint of the existing and you still can balance it out, that's totally fine as well. Not to say that that's something that's needed.
Okay. And it's my understanding that the four of you kind of agree that A is the direction that we should be heading. That's most appropriate for the neighborhood.
That sounded like their assessment, that's not common.
Okay.
The census preference.
Okay.
Yeah, in terms of capacity.
Yes.
I think the other comments, what were the?
Yeah, reducing the fenestrations and.
Right.
Okay.
And I think something else that's really gonna help moving forward is advances and corrections. We're looking at it statically from first or from Venice, and the reality is someone who can see us from the corner there.
Right,
I'm not
right.
gonna put that in concert.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what I think impacts those windows from one angle. You may be coming in, it's just windows and you don't see the actual entry to, and that's where I think the hoods or something of that nature holds that side of the house.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And I think too, now that we have, we know where we're going with direction, we can put together some 3D images as well for the next review.
I would challenge you to just horizontal siding. Just,
Okay.
I would just say.
Yeah.
That you may end up solving some of the proportional items in terms of dealing with it, but maybe a vertical solution. Or siding solution. So I don't know if that, just the kind of concept of trying to stretch something out because everything kind of builds.
Mhm.
Horizontally. Siding that's horizontal actually reinforces it. When we start to kind of look at assignment of materials and proportion of that, I would just throw a vertical siding solution in there to see if it gives you, not to say that that's the right solution, just, sometimes once you see something on the table and it just kind of sticks, you're like, man, and your horizontal siding, it just kind of continues on. But challenge yourself to, I think it was the right move to say, hey, less materials, I think that was right, but see if that gives you.
Would you be open to more than just the two materials? If it looks appropriate?
In the right location.
Thank you, Mr. Seer.
Thank you.
I apologize, but you've done that for me to see a way, this one, so I want to make sure I.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Seer.
Thank you. Limited use of solid.
Mhm.
Commercial entry of this. You need a great location.
Okay.
But yeah. Sketch around a little bit. But I think my comment last time about that just felt like it felt like a lot. This feels like very fine. You have some opportunity for.
Okay. That's good.
Hopefully
Yeah.
don't get discouraged. This is a complex project.
It is.
It really
Yeah.
is. I know you sat through, I'm just kind of teeing this up for next one. So I know you sat through, I think it was 11:35 and it'd been here a couple months. And that's a complex project too.
Mhm.
It's not uncommon that it takes a couple steps to get to that point.
Yeah.
So I know you're very familiar, you've been here a couple times and such, but I just don't want you to get discouraged. That maybe we had to take a step back last week to get to this point, to have this kind of dialogue. But I don't know if next month is going to be approval month. I mean, it just depends on what we get, but it may take some steps to get to that. We'll do our best to try to get it.
Okay. Sounds good.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
I'm going to ask. Break a little bit? Please.
Awesome. So, a recess for a second, is that okay?
Yes. You can. Please, Mr. Ray.
Okay.
We'll still leave the audio running on the off chance we forget to check that.
Okay.
Yeah, we just have it.
We'll make sure that we.
Thank you so much.
Likewise, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. Okay. We're almost done. Well,
Yeah. Two more, one was requested to be.
Excellent. Yeah. You know what it was?
You know, it was a good conversation. But
What? It's good. That's good. That's good. It's good dialogue. I mean, what projects we stay the course, but they're very complex and it's hard to. of something without saying script. And I think it wasn't a situation where they went back. It's just giving them Bob to illustrate something, to design something that potentially could be an alternative, but, you know, and I think that's something fair. It's like, that's what they wanted to build, that's what they can afford. But let's see, you know, they're not gonna cost them an issue, but that's what they want to propose. See if they'll be work for them to allow themselves to illustrate.
I think like, we go through that process all the time. First video, you know, it's like, somebody gets a flyer in the wall and that actually really works. You know, like about, or other times you're like, oh, it's so easy, right here, 6 months later, you throw drawings out the window, trying to do the right solution and do 10 of their own. It's just prove it with first one, but yeah, it was very true. I gave that presentation. It doesn't function, it doesn't work. What are you showing me now for? That's.
I just, you know, just in terms of looking at I was going back to my desk and never. That's kind of not. Okay. So.
Yeah.
All right, so what do I need to say to get us back on? Cycle?
Yeah, we're back on.
Okay.
I don't think we've ever really clarified how to do that, like, since we're virtual.
Motion to recess, motion to restart.
Maybe, I don't think we've ever been that formal.
All right, well, we're back on record now. All right, here we go.
So we are circling back to number 8, which is 1079 High Street. This is the result of a code violation that was issued for work prior to the union approval. This is for the installation of the mural on a previously unpainted masonry, measuring approximately 33 feet, 6 inches by 48 feet, 11 inches. As part of their application, they are proposing to remove the Lux 23 and replace it with well, materials used to be the IOJ 8624, which is the documentation for that. The Short North Alliance has been carefully curating the bills that have gone up on North High Street. The applicant should probably reach out to them as a effort to continue curating what is going up along there. And that staff would like to pose with requiring the applicant to completely remove the mural if appropriate. I'm not saying that it is, I'm just saying it would be something we need to discuss. Staff recommends continuing the application at the request of the applicant. Basis for recommendation are the Short North design guidelines murals. This is the one that if we have any feedback from our applicant, I would like to give it to them. So if they need to start working or revising it, they can.
So just a little bit of help. So the issue is this mural was not approved.
Correct.
And typically, all of the murals that are in the Short North is curated between the Short North.
They're typically done kind of hand in hand with them. There is another mural that, again, code violation, and they are working with the Short North Alliance. Because that mural across the street sounds like it's going to be one that was one of the serious swaps out. They were coming back with details. This one, I'm not saying it needs to go through that same process, but I do think the applicant needs to work with the existing establishments. Because we don't want to oversaturate the area of our work either.
Makes sense. Second code violation, for the Lux 2030 and their time.
Yeah, so the code violations, how they get issued, if there's multiple items, they all get issued in one bill. So they're not necessarily separate unless they've done something and then gone back and done something else.
So if you're asking for just general feedback from me, that was well, it's still public tagline, which doesn't have anything that reads. If it truly was. Then I think it needs to go to the sharing. The parts of the story, coordinate through them. It'd be nice if they, I don't know if they issue a recommendation letter or something. With this package. So.
They might offer like letters, words.
Because I don't think we want to get into the business of curating
No.
everything that's going on with that.
Discussion.
No, I would agree. I would agree with that. So now I understand that I didn't pick up on the proposed option with the literal Lux 23 was to basically echo the live well first portion of it. I didn't see all of it. I'm just coming. Right. So I would agree with Mr. Sullivan in terms of, you know, the whole idea is not to be signage, not to be kind of communicated as such, this is to be displayed as art instead of not having a tagline. Seems like that would be. I would agree with the steps in terms of going back to coordinating and putting a letter of support, short lines, and having that collaboration. So the graphics themselves, I have no concern with the graphic. This is it's more process. So.
Yeah, I agree that this is security, you know, but also scourging. But it's sounds and process.
Pretty interested with this meeting. The existing unit figure is this 300 problem, or do they propose it to fix with 300 problem?
I think what they used is the product mentioned. I'm trying to remember if I asked for clarification. I don't think they responded, but I was also getting Italian and Victorian right after the other. So they unfortunately, days after each other.
So I think if we could get some direction and clarification on the submitted, it's very similar than other ones that we approved, but one is the list that they put on. Motion to continue.
So what we're doing is just, that's enough dialogue and then we'll continue then.
I mean, if we have further items to discuss, I mean, that can be discussed with the applicant here. Can you do that? But they're not here, so it sounds like this feedback's really good, so if we want to do it here, that would be okay.
So is that motion? Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passed.
Thank you. And then application number 9 is 1007 Hunter Avenue. This is to remove the existing front door and transom and replace with the fiberglass front door and transom. I know we had asked at the business meeting for some additional photographs showing any damage or deterioration. Our applicant is not here. So I would recommend continuing it because I do think to have that discussion with the applicant.
So you haven't done, you haven't gone on the site or anything. Let's see. You just asked for additional information.
Yes.
Okay.
Sometimes the photographs speak well enough that they don't necessarily need to do a site visit.
For sure. Let's go motion to continue.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion. Any other business that we can take care of?
So the only business we have is the new business that you've already taken care of. So I do not have any old business. I will check up on work nominations for additional members because that was asked, and I do not currently have. Well, I'm thinking But just as a heads up, I will be out of town for this meeting. So I believe Jacqueline Lehman has agreed to that, but I need to double check. So at least another member of staff will be here who has been on board for a while. I don't think we're going to let Morgan Grant, who's our newest member, I just need to thank you guys, the electricians, to do a good job.
Awesome. We should have our meeting together and we'll get lots of. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.